Anderson.
This is 365 Sports.
Frazier adding more numbers, more yards to those. Oh, they don't have him yet. Look at Tommy Frazier. How many tackles can one man break? Touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Ward takes the snap. Play action. Drops. Looks. Pops out of the pocket. Runs to his left. Throws it downfield. It is caught by Dunn. He's got the first down to the 40. Down to the 50. Down the sideline to the 40. Down to the 30. He separates. He's to the 20. To the 10. To the 5. Touchdown. Florida State. Warwick Dunn on third down. Unbelievable.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance. Protecting Texans since 1952.
Burrow's got time, launching for the end zone, jump ball, touchdown, Terrence Marshall.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Touchdown for Russell, but only 14 of 29. He finds his number one target, number one, Corey Coleman, off to the races, touchdown.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Welcome in. Smokey has the day off today. Yesterday, I had the day off. I didn't do anything fun. I just had a doctor's appointment at a weird time. So it didn't behoove me to, come in here. And I was bored most of the day, Craig. I missed you terribly.
Oh, well, thanks. We made it just fine, so I hope you're doing all right there. And,
yeah, I mean, it wasn't anything. I'm not sick or anything. I just had to have a routine checkup, and because, nothing makes sense in this world. We can see you at 4 o'clock. I'm like, can we do any other time than 4 o'clock? They're like, no. I'm like, well, can you just give me my medicines that you prescribed to me for, 5 years? Like, well, not without a checkup. I was like, okay, you got me over a barrel, medicine. So that's why I was not here yesterday. Today on the show, we've got Dan Rogers blogging the boys. He's got some interesting thoughts on the Cowboys and how they should approach free agency. Grayson Grunhafer right after that. We'll go through the Boston College schedule as we begin our ACC journey through the schedule today. Ryan Andrade will talk college basketball with us. He's with RotoWire. And then Justin Williams of The Athletic on his thoughts about the ACC deal with Florida State and Clemson and how it could pave the way for a Super League and whatever construct that happens. So that's all coming up today. And, of course, my top 5. And some other things we'll get to, a couple of discussion topics, and so on and so on. So, Craig, today it was announced, and good news for you. You've retired, like me, from high school football, that there are some Big 12 games coming on Fridays, including Baylor and Auburn. So right off the bat, Baylor and Auburn on a Friday night. They've announced that among several other Friday games, the Space Coast game, quite a few. What do you think about this Friday schedule for the Big 12?
Well, I mean, we can break it up a little bit and talk about Baylor first, since that's a game that we would otherwise be covering normally. I don't love it for everybody involved, but I understand it. I mean, I think that's just kind of where we are now with TV slots, and this particular conference is Friday is your opportunity to put on a big showcase game or have a bigger audience that you might not otherwise have, because it would be a game pushed to ESPN Plus or just a weird time slot where far fewer people are likely to tune in. I don't know. I don't recall off the top of my head how the ratings were for the Friday night games last year. I know the ones I got to watch I enjoyed. The ones that lasted late enough for me to get back home and catch the tail end of, I enjoyed that. But I also entirely understand the folks who hate the disruption that it can cause to high school football. Fridays belong to high school football for a lot of people, and especially in this state. So I know that Baylor and Texas Tech and and those schools don't want to play, but I know it also matters in Alabama. So Auburn's not too keen probably playing on a Friday night and otherwise being able to go watch their local high school team. But it's just something that the league and other leagues have to do to get their TV time. So I don't know how that bodes for the future, especially if you see an SEC, a Big Ten continue to gobble up territory. I mean, that's just, you go get two more teams, that's another game every week that suddenly you need a spot for. And sorry, but it's going to get precedent over Iowa State versus, Kansas. I mean, it just is. And so this is something that's just out of necessity. And I actually think it can be kind of unique and cool. Like, I enjoyed some of what I saw on Fridays, but I'm also not, like, beholden to the high school football gods. I don't feel like I have to bend over for them and just allow them to have that time, because college football kind of needs to do this. But in moderation, I like it. I'll just put it that way. And so for Baylor Auburn, I would have much preferred that to be a Saturday game. I think most people would have. The reactions I saw in the comments, a lot of people upset about disrupting high school football, and those traveling in upset about it being a Friday rather than a Saturday. But I think that'll actually, early on at least, if this was like week 7, I wouldn't necessarily think so. But week 1, I think that'll actually have a pretty good spotlight on it, that game. I think it's unique enough that there will be enough interest to still get a good rating there. Now, we can go through the rest of them because there are some other good matchups on here. But I don't love it, but I understand it, and that's just what I keep coming back to. I know I'm repeating it, but that's just how I'm kind of rationalizing everything.
If I were the schools around here, knowing this now, as much as I could, I would try to move my games to my game that week to Thursday.
Yeah,
I would. I mean, just because it is Auburn at Baylor. Like, there has not been an opponent a non-conference opponent this big in here since the Grant Taft era. Bottom line, like, since the Grant Taft era, they have never had anybody as big as Auburn non-conference-wise in here. Now, conference-wise, I mean, they've had Nebraska and Texas and A&M and Oklahoma and whoever you want from the Big 12 SWC days. But as far as non-conference-wise, in my entire tenure here, they've not had anybody in here that big. Before that, they didn't, because they were trying to schedule teams like UNLV and still lost to them. So I think this one in particular is kind of a big deal for Baylor to get an actual SEC team in here on a weekend. So
yeah, I think Utah was a pretty nice opponent, but I can understand where they're not, I guess, maybe the level of Auburn for some people. But, yeah, I think Utah was actually a really nice one that was here in the last few years. But I get where you're coming from. It's a big game that a lot of people were looking forward to, and they can still look forward to it, but they just have to adjust their schedules to Friday night rather than Saturday. So, yeah, I'll actually be able to attend this. We'll see where we are at that point. But, I'm done in the high school football game. I did my time 10 times over, so I have earned the ability to go free on Friday nights, and I'm looking forward to it regardless. But yeah, I definitely understand not being pumped up about this and not loving the fact that high school football is getting a little bit of its room taken from it in terms of having all that real estate to itself. That's not the case anymore, and it probably won't be the case for the foreseeable future because these teams got to play sometime in some place. But yeah, Thursday would be more ideal.
And Craig, there are, in the 49 states that have major college football in them, because nobody's going up to play Alaska, but in the 49 states that have college football in them, high school football is only a big deal in about 10 of them. So there's 40 other states as far as sacrosanct Friday nights. And I think that's the problem for high school football, is that they just don't have any, like, they've got Texas, and Texas is a big deal, but the other two big population, states when it comes to that are California and Florida. And having been in both places, enough, especially living in Florida and traveling to California enough, they just don't care as much about high school football there as they do here, or as they do in Louisiana, Alabama, and Georgia right now, or Ohio, or, parts of Pennsylvania. Like, there's just not as much of a fervor for it. So when the coaches all get together and say, hey, what about Friday nights? There's 40 states worth of coaches that are like, so what about it? Like half.
So what's your point? Like,
my point is like, there's no, like, high school football doesn't have like it's not like a 50-state thing where all 50 states would be like, whoa,
right, I get
why
that.
are you doing that? So, like, my point being is, like, they're just, I mean, even though it's a big deal in Texas, well, it's not a big deal in Colorado. So, like, when Georgia Tech plays at Colorado, nobody cares, right? So, like, there's more states that don't care than more states that do. So when it comes down to Friday night as sacrosanct for high school football, I just don't think that holds up nationwide. So
no, it doesn't hold up nationwide. Yeah. It doesn't mean people are going to be less pissed about it, though.
No, they have a place to be pissed about it. The problem is they're kind of screaming into the void because they're unfortunately in the minority.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty well established. Yeah, that people don't like Friday nights. So, yeah, I mean, they don't really want to play it, but they're going to have to because of the TV deal. So, I mean, you mentioned Georgia, though. That Georgia Tech fans are going to care about going to Colorado on Friday night. I saw plenty of Auburn fans that cared about traveling to Texas on a Friday night. So, I mean, you're right. There's not 50 states, but even if they did, it wouldn't matter, Paul, because ESPN would still say if they're going to do it to Texas schools, they definitely are going to do it to – Colorado. So, yeah, there's nobody that's off limits no matter how much you care because it's pretty clear that what you care about doesn't matter to the TV people. So, I mean, it's a bummer. It's not ideal, but, again, I understand why they're doing it, and it's because TV wants that. And if you also want your time on national TV, it's this or – I guess put your foot in the ground and really get screwed over and end up with all your games on ESPN+. So you got to take what you can get, and I think that's what you're doing here if you're the Big 12. And if you're the ACC, the SEC, I mean, there's a mix of schools, but there's a lot of Big 12 on Friday nights, and we knew when they were putting their last deal together that Friday nights and trying to spread the schedule around to get these types of spots was going to be a part of the understanding of what you were going to have to do. Now, what does that look like 5 or 10 years from now? I don't know. Like, are you suddenly the MAC and you've got Tuesday games and Wednesday games? I mean, that's when I think, the writing would just be on the wall at that point of where you are on the priorities list. But for now, it's just a matter of getting the right real estate. So, yeah, not ideal for Baylor, Auburn, or some of these other games we'll probably talk about. But I'm going to still be there. I'm still looking forward to it. It doesn't ruin the game by any means. It's just maybe an inconvenience for some or not ideal. But ultimately, it's just a football game that moved up a day. So if that's some major thing that somebody can't get over, then I don't know what to tell them. But, yeah, it's not your typical college football dream scenario.
No, and, a couple teams have – 2 Friday night games. Houston's got 2, and it appears that Arizona has 2. Everybody else on the list, Arizona State has 2. Does Colorado have 2?
They got 2 in the first 3 weeks.
Oh, that's right. Colorado has 2. Okay, so a lot of these teams are kind of getting doubled up on, and then everybody else is kind of random. BYU has 2. Do they? No, just 1. Okay.
I see Colorado twice. I see Arizona State twice. I see Houston twice. I see I think that's maybe it as far as
Arizona twice, right? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, Arizona's twice on there.
Yeah, K-State at Arizona and then Arizona State on rivalry weekend is there as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's not like it's not everybody's getting a Friday night game. It's not that. It's kind of like the Big Ten last year. Not everybody got a Friday night game, but that one was a little more snooty than this. This, I think, is kind of more the luck of the draw of the time slot as opposed to, USC is going to play 2 Friday night games in the Big Ten in their first year, but Ohio State's never going to play on Friday night.
Because they're Ohio State, they don't have to do that. So, why would you inconvenience yourself? And so, look at that. The sport of, USC's actually surprising to have to use as a counterexample because, you wouldn't think they get screwed over, but they're also the new booty. So, it's part of just being in the Big Ten and also being out west, I suppose. But there also is the factor of, these are games that I guess they find appealing to play on Friday nights as opposed to what the other options were. So, I think there's some good games on here. There's also some games that if they come and go, no one will probably notice for the most part. Looking at you, Tulsa, Oklahoma State, except for the fans of those schools. But I do think if you go over them, there's plenty of interest we could formulate right now, knowing far less than we will by the time these games roll around. Like Georgia Tech, Colorado, that's a hell of a game right out of the gates. And otherwise, where would that be? Stuck on FS2 at what time on Saturday night? Would that even be on main cable? You would think so, but then again, in week 1, without just looking at the schedule right next to me, there's a lot of other big games that I know are there. So Georgia Tech, Colorado, I think is a fun game. That should have a nice spotlight on it, even though, yes, you'll have the high school football conflict. Auburn at Baylor. I mean, I think that one's a big showcase for Baylor, and also, a nice little road test early on for Auburn. And, obviously you get the Hugh Freeze backstory, just him dealing with cancer now at this point. And I mean, we can hype up all these things pretty easily, because I think there's games that are interesting. I know Colorado, Houston, most people out nationwide are not going to care about that game, but Big 12 fans will, and certainly Dion will pull in some viewers. So you see the point of having Colorado on early. Get them in early while they're still unbeaten and while they're fun and fresh, and then see where they are later on in the year. But yeah, definitely getting Dion in there twice early on is a smart TV move, because he will bring in eyeballs. K-State, Arizona. That's a non-conference game, right? So that's the end of that little back and forth, but a nice little, I guess, teaser for actual Big 12 play. Tulsa, Oklahoma State. I mean, you just have a lot of history there. TCU, Arizona State. That could be a pretty damn good game, man. That's a good game on paper. So, like, when September 26th rolls around, I'll have that Friday free, then, yeah, I'll definitely watch that game. West Virginia at BYU. We already knew that was a Friday game, but they just reinforced that, and that could be good depending on Rich Rodriguez and where they are by early October. Houston, UCF, a month later. That's the space game on a Friday night, so you got that little backdrop. Arizona State. I'd be interested to know how Sun Devils and Wildcats fans feel about the rivalry on a Friday night. Like, that might be a bridge too far for maybe some people, and I could see where that would really ruffle your feathers.
But it's Black Friday, so.
But it's Black. Okay, yeah, right. There you go. Black Friday, so it doesn't matter. And then Utah at Kansas also on Black Friday, which that could possibly be a good game. We have no idea right now, and certainly not this far ahead of time, where those two will be at Black Friday point. But yeah, you'll have a little doubleheader there, and it's not even every week. I mean, there's a month-long gap between Houston, UCF, and Arizona State for the Big 12. So yeah, there's a lot of games, but it'll give them a bigger platform than they'd probably otherwise have. That's just kind of how I'm looking at it. And here's the thing: what is your alternative?
Yeah.
What else are you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to say, we put our foot down and we refuse to play. It's like, well, you got to play. I mean, you can only play where you can play. So unless you want to start playing on Tuesday nights, I think you're going to have to give up the occasional Friday. But I am curious to see, as those weeknight games maybe become more status quo, just how much pushback there is when, as you brought up earlier, in Ohio State's never playing these games, and you have the Colorados or the Arizona States or somebody that's playing two of these, if not maybe three of these weekday games at some point. So yeah, that's something to pay attention to, because there probably is some disadvantage or advantage to that. But it's fun to see games. I'll put it that way, rather than just looking at the downside to it. I do think it's fun to just see these games pop up and kind of go like, okay, well, TCU, Arizona State on a Friday night. All right, that's interesting, and I'm looking forward to some of these games. So yeah, it's fun to see. Although it's a little bit of a tease, only being March, that we still have another 6 months to wait to actually watch these games unfold. But Georgia Tech, Colorado will be a nice one out of the gate, as will Auburn and Baylor. That's a nice little double dip, albeit both on Friday night for the Big 12.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on. The AAC presidents voted today to establish a minimum standard of benefits that schools are required to share with athletes in the new rev share era. $10 million over 3 years, becoming the first conference to make such a move. They will not be the last. Schools that fail to meet the $10 million standard by the 27-28 academic year will be subject to a review of their membership status within the league, Commissioner Tim Pernetti tells Yahoo Sports. There's going to be a minimum standard across all conferences, but the AAC is the one that I would say first is going to maybe have a couple schools that might have trouble, hitting that benchmark. The SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC probably won't, but they'll all set them. I mean, this is coming because there will be some, like we said before, that maybe this is also their excuse to say, like, well, we're going to opt out completely because we just don't want to do this. We don't have the stomach or enthusiasm at this university to play in this level of college athletics.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's kind of figuring out what's what's the best practice for themselves. I can't wait till we figure this part of it out so we can stop talking about the money sharing and all of that part of it, and how will these schools manage to survive and everything like that. I just don't enjoy that anymore at this point, and I know it's a big part of what's going on, so I'm just looking forward to when we get on the other side of it, and it's not just in limbo. It's just like it is what it is, and you know what? If some throats get cut, so be it. Like, and I don't mean to make it that extreme, but like, yeah, there's some programs that might not survive this, or they're going to have to drop down. So I think to ensure that you remain competitive and you have everybody on the same page, then yeah, you got to have a minimum. Like, are you in or are you not? Because there would probably be a school that if you didn't do this would say, we're going to do the bare minimum and we're just going to enjoy the fruits of being in this conference, but we're going to put out the least amount of effort and just see where it takes us. And that's not what you can afford to have. You need to have your schools fully invested. And I know there's a whole conversation about, who will survive and who will not. And I think this will be one of those things that shows us exactly that. Like, you're either going to pony up and pay the piper every year and put your money where your mouth is and be competitive, or you're going to have to just ultimately admit, like, we can't do this and that's okay, and go take your ball elsewhere. And I hate to be like callous or cold about it, but that's just going to be the case. There's these conversations we've had over the last few years about the has and the have-nots. We're about to really see that for real. Like, you're going to have the money to pay and compete, or you're not going to have the money to do it. And that's where more of that separation or consolidation, whatever word you want to use, but both go hand in hand with, I think, that. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised that they're doing that, and I would imagine most everybody will have something along those lines to ensure everybody's, putting their money up and trying to be competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Kirby Smart is always kind of like one step ahead of the game when it comes to recruiting. Like, nobody has a bigger recruiting budget than Georgia does right now. Nobody spends as much time doing it as Kirby Smart. So he is constantly trying to find like new ways to entice people to come to Georgia. Well, the Kirby Smart bill had aimed to help Georgia football players and other state athletes with an income tax break for NIL compensation. That bill died in the Georgia Senate. It could be attached to the House, but that's some crafty stuff there, trying to be like, hey, don't go to Alabama. You'll have to pay more taxes. In Georgia, you get a tax break for NIL. I'm not trying to say like, man, I really hope the government sticks it to everybody, but that needs to be something that's not like, you shouldn't have to go state to state and go, well, in Georgia, we get to do this. And then the other states have to now scramble to, oh, we have to give tax breaks to college athletes. It's too much for me.
Why can't we figure out how to get everybody on the same page? Yeah. Why is there no standard? Well, because there's guys like Kirby Smart who want to, in Georgia, go and make sure that the guys aren't paying taxes on their money, whereas in other states you either can't do that or they're not going there because that's a bridge too far. But we knew somebody, especially in that part of the country, would figure out a way to try to and further amplify their already advantageous position. So I am not surprised in the slightest that Georgia is one of those schools trying to do that. And we've heard things like this. I mean, this isn't like a brand new news item that we're hearing about, and it's not surprising in any way. But I'm glad that for now that looks like it's dead, because I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Like, so now you don't have to pay taxes. Like, they're college athletes. Why are we pretending like these are like the like the saviors of Earth? Like, they don't have to pay taxes. They don't have to sit. Yeah. They don't have to do anything. Like, really, I mean, just show up and play football. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like. I mean, somebody's got to eventually put their foot down and go like, wait a second, we got to like have some like normalcy here. Like, now we're not even going to tax things. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So yeah, I'm glad that got stuffed for the time being at least. But yeah, I'm not surprised to see people trying to take advantage in any way they can, because they don't want a standard.
Yeah.
They talk about standards. They don't want a standard. Kirby Smart doesn't want a standard because Kirby Smart can out-advantage like most every school out there right now, and he can possibly one day convince his entire state to give Georgia football more advantages because they got to compete with Alabama, and there is that element there in that part of the country especially. So, yeah, I'm thankful as an American we're not just letting everything go college football wise of like, here's what everybody else has to do. But college football players or college athletes, they're just free from all that jazz. I think that's silly.
Well, I mean, tax breaks should be provided to people because they're providing some sort of benefit to the entire state or country.
Do you understand Georgia football provides more entertainment for the state of Georgia? Yeah, I mean, that would be the whole thing, right?
But again, that's not everybody. This to me, and look, I will use this example until the day I die. It took forever for the Marlins to get a new park because they wanted. Florida is a very large state geographically. I mean, it's from taint to tip in Florida, from Pensacola to Miami, is a long way. It's like a 10-hour drive. And they were trying to attach a sales tax that they would get money off of for the entire state. And I remember watching the news and the guy from Miami who was pushing it was like, I understand why you guys don't support me on this. And there's dudes from Jacksonville and Ocala and Tallahassee going, man, I've never even been to Miami. I've lived in the state my whole life. I've never been south of Tampa. Why should the people in my city have to pay this tax? What if I'm not a Georgia Tech fan or whatever, why are these tax breaks going that now my government is going to have less money to do something because we got a quarterback for a team I didn't even go to? What do I care?
Yeah.
Those are the things that tax breaks ideally, and I understand that this is not how they're enacted, but you're supposed to get a tax break because you're building a factory or you're doing something that's going to bring something to the state that benefits that area. This doesn't benefit anybody but the few coaches there.
Yeah, what's interesting about it is apparently Saban came up with the idea, and then some LSU grad's the one that actually put it out there, and then it became known as the Kirby Smart Bill because it would benefit him obviously. But yeah, I think that's a good stoppage there by
Georgia so far.
Georgia politicians, but so far I don't think that's the end of that story probably because I'm sure there will be a lot of elbow rubbing and golf course chats and things like that to make sure the dogs get their advantage. But, I think it's pretty silly on the surface. What are we talking about here? Now you're not getting taxed because, I mean, what even is this? This is the most rigged, unofficial, official job I've ever seen created, dude. I mean, honestly, at this point.
Well, and then, where's, the part of this is that you're supposed to be now teaching them financial literacy. Does that,
we haven't talked about that in 2 years. That went right out the window.
Right, yeah. So oh no, hey, don't worry about anything. No taxes. Yeah, we're good. I mean, they say tax breaks. I don't know what the break is, but less taxes at least if you're,
it would be, in this case, it was eliminating income tax.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Eliminating income tax on your NIL earnings. So that's a pretty big savings right there.
Yeah.
I would think that he's not there anymore, but Carson Beck would have probably saved a few $100,000 if that were the case. So, you can see why that would be super appealing. We'd all love that on our income. But, that's dead for now, but I'm sure that will be resurrected at some point or another because you can't have dastardly South Carolina or somebody that's getting the Clemson or getting the advantage over you.
Well, here's the deal. Carson Beck doesn't have to pay.
Oh, he's in Florida,
He's in Florida, so he doesn't have a state income tax. See, I'm sure what the people of Georgia would prefer is, hey, I should have the same benefit as everybody else. Don't charge me a state income tax, and let's just not charge anyone a state income tax.
Let's be like Texas and Florida,
Yeah, let's be like that and go through that.
Although there's other, they get your money other ways, though. It's not as clean cut as it appears.
No. There's always, hey, we're not going to give you money this way. But in Texas, hey, you're going to pay property taxes. We're going to slowly sneak them up until you're like, how did my mortgage get this much?
Yeah.
Well, that's how it's going to be. When we come back, Dan Rogers blogging the boys on the Cowboys and free agency. This is 365 Sports.
Month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, drive home a 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab or Ram Lone Star Crew Cab, both with massive $15,000 off MSRP. Looking for unbeatable value? Drive home a Ram 1500 Tradesman Quad Cab starting at just $35,995 or upgrade to a Tradesman Crew Cab for only $37,995. These deals won't last long. Hurry to Allen Samuels today.
Come by. Let's be friends.
I'll never get used to this.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Welcome back, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and we're joined by a brand new guest, but someone who I read quite a bit, Blogging the Boys, Dan Rogers from Blogging the Boys. And Dan, you have done a very good job of kind of pointing out, like, there's these weird narratives around the Cowboys all the time about free agency and trades and all that. And every time I see a national reporter be like, well, this player is interested in the Cowboys. All right, well, the Cowboys are interested in no one that they've probably directly drafted until they need to be. How do you think this free agency could be different, if at all, given the fact that they've maneuvered the cap kind of well here in the short term?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm glad that you think that I do a good job of that, because most of Cowboys Twitter would disagree. I definitely have my own take on things. That doesn't line up to the feelings that a lot of the fan base has right now, which is a really tough time. For this time of the year I can't remember a time when it's been pleasant for Cowboy fans. It's just never a fun time to go through. But, you ask, how do I think it's going to be different? And quite honestly, I don't know that it's going to be too much different. They are moving money around. But I don't think it's going to come in the form of some big free agent move. I know we all are hoping for that. And even me, who I applaud the moves of front office and how they operate and the way they try to distance themselves from free agency, because I know that that's not a good way to spend money. But I also would like to have a player here or a player there. But I don't know that it's going to change a whole lot, quite honestly. They may look for some areas where they look to try to spend a little more than they have in the past. which would not be hard to do if you're comparing to, like, say, last season, which they just avoided it almost altogether. But I think fans are going to be disappointed because I just don't think the free agency is just not that's the one narrative that the fans got right, is the Cowboys, they just don't spend the free agency, and I don't think a lot's going to change this season.
No, and there are some, like, what they don't do, Dan, is I think that they haven't figured out the middle ground of it. Like, they don't need to go out on the first day and sign somebody unless that person is just so perfect for them that they can't believe it, to a 7-year deal or anything like that. But, like, when someone like Devontae Adams that you could get for a relative song compared to what he's normally worth to be your number 2 receiver is out there, a 2-year deal for a guy like that, not a bad thing, right?
Probably not. I mean, no. So a 2-year deal, I mean, you can't really go wrong with a 2-year deal, especially 2-year deals that are really 1-year deals that, you can get out of. It really comes down. So the Cowboys, they do have a type, and they do like to go after guys that are kind of coming out of their rookie deals, maybe like in the 27-year-old range, to where you can, like, possibly have some upside with them if they work out. And they've actually have re-signed some of their own free agents that they got. Like, you took a look at Malik Hooker, for example, is just one that just jumps at me. But so I feel like that's what they're going to do. They're still going to look for low cost. They're going to look for a young player, maybe with some upside, and probably like a bridge player where that can get you to, like, where you're having a developing young player, first, second-year player, or a new rookie come in, and just to kind of help you along for roster depth. I don't know. Devontae Adams, this seems a little too splashy for me. I don't know. I honestly don't know what the Cowboys' plans are at wide receiver, if they're looking to use one of their premium draft resources at that position. And if they are, then I don't even think they're even looking in that direction with, like, Devontae Adams or any of the bigger names. So I don't know. To me, that's just a little splashy.
Yeah. What's your feeling on running back, because they will address it in the draft. They have to, whether it's Ashton Genty or somebody after that. And I guess it depends on where Ashton Genty falls, if they can truly say no to him, if he's there at 12. But regardless of who they take, what do you think about bringing Rico Dowdle back? I think personally that would be, it's like a net zero move to me. I kind of like to see them move on from Rico and maybe, sign somebody that's maybe a little bit more established, because we are talking about someone who's really probably only going to start, if at all, for a year.
Yeah, no, so the running backs, they kind of put themselves on a corner here. I mean, you're absolutely right. They got to draft a running back. This is, I felt like the last 2 drafts, they were in a great position to find someone in the 3rd round, that they can get who's a ready to go starter. And they haven't done that. There's always been some other player that they've liked better, which honestly, when I look at Marvion Overshown or like, Cooper Beebe and those players, it's like kind of hard to blame them. But they have not done that. And so they put themselves a little bit behind the 8 ball there. So they have to do it. And with no 4th round pick, they got to do it in the first 3 rounds. I don't know where it's going to come from. Genty, I don't know. I mean, this is my feeling on Genty. I don't like the idea of spending your top draft resource at the running back position, but I'm going to rank my players. I'm going to stack my players, and where they're at is where they're at. And the Cowboys, they will do their stacking. And if you're getting one of your blue chip players, one of your top 7, that fall to 12, whoever it is, you're going to make that pick. So I'm not going to overthink that too much, but I do think that you can find running backs in this draft all over the place in the first 3 rounds. It's going to be, you can come in and play right away. And you are going to have to package that with a veteran, and it's probably going to be Rico. I'm already preparing myself for Rico. I don't particularly care for the running back free agents that they have this season. It's pretty bland, and especially in comparison to the options that there were a year ago. But so to me, it's like you just sign Rico, and you're going to draft one in the first 3 rounds, and that's going to be your running back group.
Yeah, I guess sometimes I just wish they would, like, let people walk and just it's fine. Like just go and do that and try to do something different. Like the only one I can think of that intrigues me at all on it, like, and again, this is a 1 year flyer, would be a guy like Raheem Mostert who's still got some, a little bit of shake to him that's been established that, whoever your rookie running back is, I think can maybe get a little bit more. There's a little more to draft off of him than say Rico.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. To me, I'm thinking like Dobbins to me is a guy to where I'm looking at maybe, and Mostert fits that perfectly too, where you sign him to a 2-year deal that's really a 1 year deal, and it's going to be low cost, and in those particular cases, it's probably going to be incentive based because they just had trouble staying on the field. But you get a veteran presence in there, come in there, package with a rookie, and then you have there's some opportunity there. So that's not out of the question too. But I really think it's going to be something like that where the Cowboys, as far as free agency goes, it's not going to be anything that it's going to get fans excited.
Yeah. Draft-wise, is there anybody in your opinion, like to me, Ashton Genty is that at running back. I normally wouldn't say pick a running back at 12. I just think he's special. Is there anybody that you see that if it fell to them that they would say, like, regardless of position and need, like this guy's too good for us to pass up, kind of like they did with both Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb, not necessarily the biggest need for them at the time, but the talent was just like, are you kidding? How can we not take this guy?
Yeah. So I do, as of like March 7th, I don't have my players stacked, and there are some guys out there, the Michigan defensive tackle, I've watched some tape on him that would be fantastic. Genty's in that boat. Wide receivers, there's a couple I like, but I haven't been able to figure out just exactly how much I like them. But I do think there are players that will be that fall in that category. Because personally, the way I see it, and I think that if the Cowboys don't get one of their stars, one of their top 7-ish, 8 players on their board, then they're likely to end up moving around. And they've done this in like 2 of the last 3 drafts. I think they've moved out of their pick. They moved out to get when they got Micah, and they moved back last year, and they got some extra draft capital. And I could see them, because sitting where they're at with draft capital, if they move around, they can actually package some good picks, and an extra second, an extra third, and that gives them some dancing chips to do some things. So unless it's one of those players that you just got to have, and I don't have that. I can't say what that player would be for me right now because I haven't looked close enough with those guys. But I know the Cowboys, there could be a guy there that they just, and I like Patrick Surtain probably would have been that guy for them. In the 2021 draft, they probably make that pick that if that happens, but then they don't have them, so you move around because there's a few guys that you like, and then you still get your guys. So it'd be interesting to see how that unfolds, because the Cowboys, they're going to have their board, and if they don't have someone they love, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they move around.
What do you see as a reasonable expectation for this team with as many holes as they have? Because they've got to address right guard. I think they really need to take an honest look at Terrence Steele's situation. I know they probably don't want to do that because that means replacing 2 starters in the offensive line and not just 1. But I think it's reasonable to ask that since you've given him this big contract, he has been good. Is this a team that is lining up with where the Jones family thinks it is, or are we looking at maybe a similar situation to last year where there's a lot of holes that they've got to fill?
I don't think that they have a lot of holes. I really like the Cowboys roster. I think this isn't going to be one of those teams where we'll be lucky to get back to 500 or push for the playoffs. I think they're going to be right in the thick of things again. Obviously, there are a lot of questions when it comes to the new coaching staff and what that brings to the equation. There could be some issues and learning curves that happen there. But from a roster standpoint, very pleased with what they have. I have more faith in Terrence Steele than the average fan. Not worried about him at all, especially when you get this with Clayton Adams coming in. I'm excited about this Cowboys offensive line. I know you mentioned right guard. Obviously, when you lose a future Hall of Fame player, that's not good. But honestly, I feel like the Cowboys were better once they started with Brock Hoffman and Zach Martin was obviously, in a decline. So I'm not worried about that. I think Cooper Beebe is going to have a good year too. My biggest concern is Tyler Guyton. To me, he's a wild card. Not sure what kind of year 2 development he's going to have. That could be an area where, you have to think about some things. But I really like the depth. I like TJ Bass. I like Austin Richards. I expect to see probably a low-cost free agent somewhere along the line, probably with some flexibility, because that's what the Cowboys like to do. I'm just not worried. It's not. I feel like the biggest thing with the Cowboys is, they got hit hard with the health. Absolutely. Like, not only just a lot of players, but a lot of important players. So I don't expect to see that again. I think this is a good team. You got some young players developing, a new draft. I'm feeling good about this team, and I think fans. I would be surprised if we saw a Cowboys season that looked anything remotely close to last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dan, great to finally meet you and get you on the show. Really enjoy reading your stuff. Thanks for hopping on. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
All right, Dan Rogers, blogging the boys. Next up, Grayson Grundhafer, Sick'em365.com. Richard Reese, and Craig, I know you guys talked about it a little bit yesterday, but I'm just kind of surprised it took him till spring, but you never know. He is in the transfer portal. We'll talk about that and more. This is 365 Sports.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Welcome back. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and Grayson Grundhafer. Sick'em365.com. And Grayson, Richard Reese is entering the portal this spring. Not a surprise. Why do you? I'm maybe more surprised that it took until spring. Why do you think he waited?
I think there's a lot that kind of goes into these decisions, right? Especially for someone that has been at Baylor for a while now and has been, a very loyal part of the program, had just an awesome freshman season. And, I think there's something to graduating and getting a degree. And so I do think that that's probably the case here with Richard, is that he'll probably graduate in the spring and then be a grad transfer and, go somewhere, go wherever he wants, but get his Baylor degree before doing so. I hope that's the case, and that's what I believe to be the case. And if so, that's great for him, to finish out that Baylor degree and then go find a place where he's going to, get utilized and get a chance to really excel, because I think it was pretty clear, going into this spring and off season period, you got Bryson Washington, you got Dawson Pendergrass, but also you brought in two really, really talented freshmen in Cade Knighton and Michael Turner. And I just think there's a lot of competition there, a lot of really good players. And I think this makes a lot of sense for Richard, but hopefully he does get his degree first. And if so, that's just an awesome thing for him.
So what would you pinpoint, or is it an amalgamation of things that led to his numbers dropping off the way that they did? Scheme changes, injuries, new players coming in, C or D, all of the above. I guess it would be D, right? But, that freshman year, he was phenomenal there in 2022. And then, last year didn't even reach 60 carries, had one score, less than 300 yards. How would you just describe the career, I guess, of Richard Reese, Grayson?
So two separate phases here, or really three, honestly. So that first year, that freshman year, I know that everyone talks about how disappointing that year was, and it truly was. And there were just a lot of little things that went wrong that just kept that team from, being good and really actually having a good year. You change a couple plays here and there, and you're looking at a much different season, whether it's, the BYU game or the night game against West Virginia or the TCU game where they should have won at the end but just couldn't. But the biggest thing that they had was a really good offensive line. And that was true in 2021, as we saw with Abram Smith and Treston Ebner. And then you fast forward to 2022, and they were still really good. They weren't as productive as they were the year before, but still awesome. And you go look at some of those runs by Richard Reese, and there's just huge holes that are opening up for him. And he truly is, a one-cut runner. He's not really a make-you-miss type guy. That's not really what he does, but he gets downhill in a hurry, gets skinny through the hole, and can do things like that, especially in that wide zone scheme. Then 2023 happens, and you see what happens when there isn't an offensive line. And Baylor just could not block. And so you really just needed, anyone that could take a hit and fall forward. So you saw a lot more Dom Richardson and, of course, Dawson Pendergrass, just guys who could at least get you, a yard or two when there's nothing there. And then this past season, I think it was kind of more the same, but obviously the scheme changed. And so now you're looking at more of an inside zone running scheme. And there's still a lot about, power and fighting for those extra yards, as I think we saw with Dawson Pendergrass and Bryson Washington. But even more so than that, you have to be able to make guys miss in the hole. And that's just not Richard Reese's style. That's not where he excels and flourishes. And so therefore, you watch him run and you see him, get tackled by an arm tackle. And then you watch Bryson Washington run and you're seeing him make a guy miss, power through the hole, maintain his speed, maintain that acceleration that allows you to create big plays. So I think once we got to that phase, it was more of a scheme fit issue for Richard Reese than anything else.
So final thing, I guess, on him, because we have, non-Baylor listeners, plenty of folks around the Big 12. Do any programs jump out to mind that would potentially be a landing spot for him? Obviously, a former Baylor guy that's played in the last handful of years, you think, Texas Tech and Joey McGuire could maybe use him. And then Houston down there with Sean Bell. But did anybody pop out to you as a potential spot to watch for Richard Reese, or somewhere you think would be a good fit for him?
I think anywhere that runs a wide zone scheme, and really the first one that comes to mind is Kansas.
Yeah.
And they're losing Devin Neal. And so he would make a lot of sense there. But truly anywhere that runs that type of scheme, I think would fit him really well. I really do think he could probably find a place where he's either the 1A or 1B for a program, whether that's at the G5 level or at the Power 4 level. But I think he's going to find a pretty good landing spot. I hope he goes to a place where he's going to get an opportunity to play a lot, because I do think he's a really talented player, but I just think his skill set really does it's tailor-made for a specific scheme. And if it's not in that scheme, I do think he would struggle.
Yeah, I really did think he would, just because he was kind of good at a couple different things, maybe work well in the scheme that Baylor's running right now. But the two guys they have are fits that I didn't really – it kind of flipped on me. I thought it would be better for Richard Reese and then maybe tougher for Dawson Pendergrass, but it's the exact opposite of that. Like Washington and Pendergrass, perfect for this, and Richard Reese not. That surprised me a little bit.
I mean, I can see that. I just think in general, there's just this level of make-you-miss ability and this level of strength and size that's just different with those two. I mean, they both run so physically compared to Richard, and Richard's just a different kind of player than them. And so now you look at kind of what Baylor's trying to build. They're trying to find guys that have both of those skill sets, right? The speed, the burst through the hole, the initial quickness, but also the size to kind of make you miss. And I do think Michael Turner and especially Caden Knighton, who I've been very high on since he committed to Baylor and after his senior season, I think there's a level that he's going to get to potentially as a freshman that's really going to surprise some people.
How do you feel about Friday night games, and specifically Baylor-Auburn on Friday night to open up the season?
I'm not a huge fan of Friday night games. I've always been kind of just, that's a high school football night, right? And that's kind of always how it's been for me. And then college is on Saturday. But, if it gets Baylor into a primetime spot, which it's very likely going to with them versus Auburn, I think it's going to be a night game. It's going to be on ESPN or Fox. That's going to be really cool. The environment's going to be really good. So for a game specifically like that, I think it's fine, right? I think your fans are going to have no problem traveling when you're getting ready to take on Auburn. I think it's going to be a very viewed game as well, because it's two programs that I think are very excited and optimistic about their teams going into this season. So I think you're going to get a lot of eyeballs on that game as well. So for this specific one, I think it's good, but you start looking at some of the other games on that Big 12 slate, and I don't know that they're going to draw quite as well on that Friday night spot, but I know they're going to have less competition. So maybe that's the thinking for it.
Grayson, what is it is the spring football time. It starts everything kicking back up, as we get through this month and into April. What do you have like a check box thing of things you're looking for, following right now, recruiting wise and just development of the roster wise?
So for me, always when I go to these spring practices, it's about the new faces. And so seeing the new transfers, the new freshmen, that's kind of the biggest thing for me when I go to those. Just getting to see, these new guys that are added to the roster, seeing new replacements, and then, also seeing how young guys grow. I think that's another big part of this. You kind of know already, what Jackie Marshall is going to look like, where his frame is going to be. But a guy like Alex Foster, you're just excited to see, what did this offseason do for him? Or Brendan Bett, who we didn't get to see last year. Those are just a few names, but there's a lot that, I'm obviously really excited about when spring does roll around. Recruiting-wise, it's really just mainly setting official visits. Still, they'll have a lot of guys on campus for practices once those get underway. Guys want to see kind of what the position coaches are like in a practice setting. So that's an exciting time as well. And then camp season, at the end of March here, I'll have the opening actually here in Austin. And then in April, I'll be in Houston for the second Under Armour camp. So lots of camps. That's obviously a great time as well. You see a lot of guys get rankings changes as they perform well at camps, like we saw from Jamarian Vincent this week, the Baylor commit, who went up from 140 in the top 247 to now being a top 70 prospect in the nation. So a big jump for him after he excelled at Under Armour camp back in February in Dallas. So all of that together just makes it a busy time right now. And then, of course, with basketball going on, that's still kind of the focus right now if things can get kind of put together as March Madness approaches.
What did that Baylor men's win over TCU do for you leading into this finale tomorrow at home against Houston?
It made me a lot more comfortable that Baylor is going to be in the NCAA tournament. But aside from that, it's just so difficult. Every game is just so difficult. And you're just like, you're watching the game, and Baylor, I think most people who were watching that game would have thought Baylor was up by 10 with a minute left in the game. And you look, and it's a 2-point game. And it's just one of those things where just nothing has been easy really for this Baylor team all year. It's a good win. It's on the road against your rival. I understand all that, but TCU's not a tournament team, so still not a great team, a team that when you're playing pretty well, you should be able to handle. And instead it ends up coming down to 2 Rob Wright free throws in order for you to really kind of just seal the deal after giving up that 13-2 run at the end there. So going into this Houston game, I'm sitting back. Maybe Baylor has their best performance of the year. Maybe they catch Houston sleeping in this final game of the year since they've already wrapped up the conference championship. Maybe that stuff happens. I think that would be great because if Baylor gets this win, now you might be looking at Baylor climbing up to the 8 seed line, honestly, if they can get this done. Because right now, Bracket Matrix has them as a 9 seed. They moved up a level after beating TCU, which should put them comfortably in regardless of what happens in this game and the Big 12 tournament. It would take a lot, really. It would take a ton of chaos for them to get left out at this point. But now it's kind of about seeding. How many more wins can you get? How solidified can you get in that 8 or 9 seed region? And if you win a bunch of games, maybe you find yourself as a 7 seed. But I kind of doubt that at this point. I pretty much am counting on Baylor probably being an 8, 9, or 10 at the moment.
It is a relief that there's nothing that they have to do in the Big 12 tournament to make it in. I mean, again, that would just be for seeding. But Grayson, historically, Kansas City's just not the place they like to be, I guess.
Not at all. They have really struggled at the Big 12 tournament. You're right. I mean, if they had lost that TCU game and then lost this game to Houston, I think they probably would have had to win 2 games in Kansas City in order to get in. And that would have been a really tough place to be. But you get that TCU win, and now you again, I feel pretty confident that Baylor's going to be in the NCAA tournament now. But again, it's about seeding and about playing your best basketball. I mean, are we ever going to see this team's best basketball? And that doesn't necessarily mean a national title contender, but really just putting together a solid stretch of games where you're playing at a really high level and actually competing night in and night out instead of, getting blown out here, eking out a win there, beating a bad team, things like that. You just kind of want to see this team maybe gain a little bit of momentum. And if they were to beat Houston and then go into the Big 12 tournament, you're kind of sitting there going, okay, maybe they could make some noise here potentially, even though, that place has been really, really difficult for them to win.
Grayson Grunhafer, Sikkim365.com. Grayson, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
So, that was a huge, it doesn't feel like it, but that was a huge win for Baylor against TCU. When you watch it on the surface, it really does, Craig, take a lot of pressure off their back here in the next week. Now, once that week's over, then the pressure cranks up and see how you can do in the tournament. I just have real, trouble seeing them make a run given their depth issues.
Yeah, I don't know. They're in the tournament, so that's what matters, I guess. I'll leave it to the more locked in, sort of college basketball minds to, dissect how good they are and how good they can be and what they can possibly do. But, it's been a very roller coaster type year for them, no doubt about it, and not a lot of optimism, although it could be worse. They could have lost to TCU and be out of the tournament or be in a situation where they needed to win, like he said, a couple of games in Kansas City where they are not typically very good. So, I think with this season, the injuries and the way things haven't quite panned out the way you expected, you take what you can get in the postseason, make some noise if at all possible, but it sure beats going in tomorrow and feeling like you have to beat the best team in the entire league who's lost one time in 19 tries, needing to beat them to secure a spot. That would have been tough. So good that they beat TCU and got that out of the way.
Absolutely. When we come back, we finally, put to rest the fact that we hate the ACC. And we talk about Boston College and their schedule. And our schedule series starts with the Atlantic Coast Conference and the Boston College Eagles. That's next. This is 365 Sports.
Allen Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Allen Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
So glad I didn't miss this yesterday, Craig. You guys were loaded up, and I, as the only ACC grad in the room, want to talk about all my brethren in the conference. And Boston College is the first up on their schedule. So, Craig, take it away.
No. You go ahead and do it. I guess this turned out from just doing Big 12 to doing all of these. I got to say, I'm not nearly as interested in Boston College as I was in some of the Big 12 or all of the Big 12 schools. But sure, let's talk Boston College, and into the summer, we'll have gone over every single team in the quote-unquote power leagues, I guess. But, yeah, I got to be honest with you. My Boston College knowledge is limited, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I remember every single rivalry game and the meaning behind it and all of that, but I'll do my best here. So, Boston College, a team that would you want them in the new Big 12? And by the new Big 12, I mean if you are – of mind that they're going to swallow some ACC teams in 2030, which I guess that's another is it going to take all the way to 2030, or do you feel like Florida State and Miami and whoever?
I think it is, because that gets them – that's the number that's palatable, right? Like, if you know that, and plus, like, that also gives it an opportunity to call one of these conferences and say, like, hey, can we come into the next TV deal where they can reasonably negotiate it? Because – one of the things I think, if the Big Ten and SEC just didn't want them at all, then what I would see Florida State and Clemson and the ACC doing is trying to just form an entirely new conference and trim what they consider the dead weight.
Yeah.
Like that, and I
don't think that's happening anytime soon.
No. I don't think that's happening. Like, that to me is like plan D for them. But
that's like 10 years from now.
Yeah, I'm sure that's on the list of like, okay, well, so here's what we'll do. We're going to opt out. We're going to start our own conference, and we're going to bring in what we need. But I think that one, it's just really far-fetched. And so to answer your question, of the teams available in the ACC that would help the Big 12, they would be far down on my list, if not at the very bottom.
Yeah, they wouldn't be very high up on mine, and it's nothing against Boston College. I think I can already hear some random Boston College fan, we don't want to be in the Big 12. And I'm like, hey, I understand.
Yeah.
I would totally understand that. So I think that probably cuts both ways, but I was just curious of sort of your thoughts. And, yeah, I do feel like they would probably be on the lower portion of the list for what people would ideally want to see the league look like if they are able to eventually go that route. But Boston College, a team that's very interesting. You got Bill O'Brien there as your head coach. So have a guy with a lot of experience, a very polarizing guy, Bill O'Brien. Like, I think everybody agrees, genius football mind, but, I don't know. There's some people he just sort of are not big believers in him. But last year, 7-6, got to a bowl game, finished tied for 8th in the ACC, lost in the pinstripe game last year to close out the season against Matt Rule and Nebraska, 20-15 in that pinstripe bowl. So that's where we last left Boston College, was year one of Bill O'Brien, bowl season, and a loss to Nebraska at Yankee Stadium. So now looking ahead to this next season, no Castellanos, right?
No, he's in Tallahassee.
He's in Tallahassee, so big move there by your quarterback, and I guess that'll be more for previews. But they open up with no Castellanos at Fordham, against Fordham there at home. Then they will travel the following week to East Lansing, Michigan on Saturday, September the 6th to take on Michigan State. They will then, the following week, travel all the way out to California, Stanford, Northern California, to meet the Cardinal in a little ACC action there. And then they get their first break of the season. So first 3 weeks, you've got Fordham, you've got Michigan State and East Lansing, and then you travel to Stanford to take on the Cardinal. So it's a pretty well-traveled first couple of big games there on your schedule, going to Michigan and then to California.
Yeah, it is interesting. They at Michigan State, again, we don't know how they're going to be. I think year two under Jonathan Smith, they'll probably should be pretty good.
Yeah, good.
All right. At Stanford, don't know how Stanford's going to be. Don't really know. I think Cal lost their quarterback, so I don't know how they're going to be early on. They've got a very weird schedule of 3, 8, and 1 in their buys. So this is. And again, this is me. I feel like I know a little bit more about BC than maybe you do, Craig.
You definitely do. You should, at least.
Yeah. I don't know. They got off. They needed – Jeff Hafley went and took the defensive coordinator job, with the Packers last year. Bill O'Brien came in, and he kind of set up a system that works for BC. And, I think it will continue to work. I just don't know – if they can get the kind of talent in there that he's going to want to win the conference. But I think they'll just be efficient. And, again, he's polarizing because, again, he's not a little ray of sunshine, that's for sure. And he's very controlling. So we'll see. But I do think that this is a team that, if you look good, if you wind up 2-1 out of these first 3, whether that's Michigan State or Stanford getting a win, I think you should be all right. And maybe they could be 3-0 because, again, I don't really know how good Michigan State and Stanford are going to be because they're both in the same spot that Boston College is, which is second year under a relatively new head coach.
Yes, so that's how the first leg of this journey will go, with a couple of pretty significant road trips, come back, and you will be at home against Cal on Saturday, September the 27th. The following week, travel to Pitt to take on the Panthers. Then it's home against Clemson on Saturday, October the 11th. Home again against UConn in a non-con matchup there on Saturday, October the 18th. So you start conference play a little bit early, but you have that late non-con matchup. Then Louisville on October the 25th. Then you get Notre Dame on November the 1st. SMU on November the 8th will be also at home. And, they got a lot of these home games.
Yeah.
It's weird. They got 3 straight home games in November. Notre Dame, SMU, and then Georgia Tech, and then finally another bye week. I was sitting there thinking, like, am I missing something here? But they've got the bye week after the first 3 games, and they don't have another one until before their very last game. So if I'm reading that right.
Yeah.
And so 8 straight games without a bye, which will be home against Cal, at Pitt, home against Clemson, home against UConn, at Louisville, home against Notre Dame, home against SMU, home against Georgia Tech, and then a break.
Yeah. While I said maybe 2-1 out of the first one, if you told me that they were 2-9 going into the Syracuse game or 3-8, like, I would totally believe that. This is tough. Like, again, Cal, of the first 4 games of their season, I think Cal is clearly the most established head coach. Maybe not the best one, but at Pitt is going to be really tough. Clemson should win that game. UConn should be a win for BC, but at Louisville, Notre Dame, SMU, Georgia Tech, all back-to-back, and that's, Miller Moss at quarterback, probably C.J. Carr, Kevin Jennings, Haynes King. That's tough. And if Syracuse improves on what they did last year, and they were good then too, this is going to be a really tough. Like, I have a hard time seeing a bowl coming out of the schedule for Boston College.
Yeah, that first 3 games, they could beat Michigan State or Stanford. I suppose, like, that's not off the table at all. So that first 3 you can sort of manage, even though there's a couple of long road trips there. But then, yeah, man, that second part, you do have 6 home games in that 8-game consecutive stretch, including 3 straight there at the end of that. Notre Dame, SMU, Georgia Tech, all at Alumni Stadium. That's pretty salty. So if you're like buying home tickets for Boston College, I think you're pretty happy with the slate. You get Clemson, you get Notre Dame, you get Georgia Tech, and those are 3 pretty sexy games. And then SMU's a good team, and I don't know how much crossover there is with UConn and Boston College, if there's anything to that as well, but that's just another home game for them to have. So, yeah, man, Notre Dame, SMU, Georgia Tech, November 1st, 8th, and 15th. All there in Boston. And then they get their last break before coming back on November the 29th against Syracuse, which will be on the road. So that's how they will close things out, is against the Orange after getting a couple of weeks to prepare for that game. So that is where Bill O'Brien and company find themselves. One road game past October the 25th. So one road game in their Final 4, and yeah, a schedule where it could get sideways really fast. But if they start off strong, maybe that'll put them in a good position to make a bowl game once again. But yeah, definitely not going to predict them to be in the ACC championship game. And that middle part of the schedule to the late part, that could get really nasty if things aren't going their way at that point. So, yeah, there you have it. There is Boston College's schedule. They get Clemson. They get Notre Dame. They get Georgia Tech. They get Louisville. And some other. Syracuse was good last year. SMU was obviously a playoff team last year. So a couple of playoff teams on this schedule. Yeah, man, they could be fighting for it to get back to 6 wins again and getting back to a bowl game.
Yeah, that's tough. They've got there's a lot of experience. Quarterbacks coming at them. There's a lot of teams that were good. Like Pitt, I can't wait I'm looking forward to talking about them, because this is a team that, looked like they were on a roll last year. Their starting quarterback gets hurt, and the whole thing fell apart.
Right.
Like, they were definitely just Jekyll and Hyde of a season. And, it pains me to say this, like, I'm thinking about FSU schedule as well, that we'll have Clemson in Florida and Miami all on it. And I think Clemson and Florida are going to be 2 of the better teams in the country. I really do. Like, I'm buying in, and maybe that's just rival fear that happens sometimes. But so looking at this for them, like, Louisville's a really tough place to go and play. Notre Dame, that's a long-time rivalry between those 2 schools, so that one a little bit more. But SMU's gonna be really good again. Like, when do you get a break in the schedule? And then even though you do get those 3 games at home of Notre Dame, SMU, and Georgia Tech, man, like, that's all teams that have a ton of experience coming back.
It's hard to imagine on paper that many teams have like a tougher on paper schedule in those 3 weeks of Notre Dame, SMU, Georgia Tech, but we'll see how good those teams are. Obviously, some of these teams we're pumping up may not be that good. Some of these teams we don't think are that great, maybe pretty good. But, yeah, this is an on-paper exercise. And just to glance, and like I said at the beginning, like I don't have a knowledge of the ACC like you do, but it is fun to kind of just look through their schedule, because I typically wouldn't do that, or I would just sort of dash through it, but just to kind of sit on it for 15 or so minutes. It's interesting to get a glimpse at that. So now I feel better equipped to talk about Boston College moving forward and kind of have an understanding of the uphill battle they could be facing on that second half of their schedule. But there you go, trying to get back to a bowl game and build on that for Bill O'Brien and company. Certainly favorable when it comes to the amount of home games, 7 home games. Maybe not so favorable in the teams that you drew, but you don't play Miami. You don't play Florida State. And who else would you be missing out of this? You play pretty much everybody else, though.
Yeah, I mean,
so you miss those 2, but you get probably all the rest of the contenders, so to speak. So, yeah, that second half will be from that Clemson game on, but it could be interesting before that. So I think that's a entertaining schedule if you're Boston College.
Yeah, you get to avoid the North Carolina schools. Duke, I think, will be a contender as well. So, like, you do avoid Duke as well. So you get to, and God in heaven knows what Florida State will be. I don't know. I mean, it's like 13-0 to 2-10 is such a hard. That's such a hard thing to like. How much? Like, are they going to swing all the way back the other way miraculously? Is it somewhere in the middle? Are they going to suck again? I don't know.
Man, if they were to go like 2-10 again, that would be hilarious. Can you imagine?
It would not be hilarious.
Oh, I would laugh so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, after I felt bad for you first, of course.
But you don't feel bad for me. Don't lie.
It just makes better show bait.
It does. They are. I think Florida State's like the control group of the new college football experiment of how it could be. Like you're riding high, and then all of a sudden you're just like nothing. Like album 1, nothing but hits. Album 2, duds. And then out of nowhere, maybe album 3 is good. I don't know. Like they're like a band,
Yeah, well, you better hope they're good for your head coach's sake, because repeat of last year. See his ass hit the road, especially with all the stuff that's swirling just in terms of the future. So, yeah, it's very important for Florida State to have a good year. And, look, man, for Boston College and all these other schools, I don't know what the feeling's like up there. It's a pro sports town more than anything. But I think there's an extra element where, I mean, how much more pressure could you really apply, or how much more stakes could you push in the middle of the table, really, outside of just saying, like, win or you die. But I think with the news this week, for everybody in the ACC, there is going to be that extra pep in their step, or that extra kick in the butt of, like, this is like, you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You don't know how quickly you're going to get there, but you see it, and it's going to grow larger each week. So it's imperative that you put on your best face from here on out and try to win to help yourself out in the future and help the ACC out, especially if you're a school like Boston College that is all in on the ACC maintaining itself and being as successful as it possibly can. Like, it's up to you guys, because Florida State and those, they're going to get their money, and then they're going to go do whatever they're going to do, and they're not going to care 2 bits about what is going on with you. So you need NC State and Boston College and Pitt and all these other schools to really raise their game if at all possible. But, easier said than done, obviously, and that's what everybody's trying to do. So we'll see how that works out for them.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's – from Florida State, I mean, Clemson didn't suffer at all. They were just like, hey.
Just sat back and watched.
They're just like, all right, we may not be as good as we used to be a little bit, but we're still pretty good, and they won the damn ACC anyway. So, maybe that's fine, for them. But is it different for FSU this year? Is it different for teams in the conference that know that at least it's going to be this way for 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, I don't know, but I do think that, like, there's a different just tone now because of what blanks have now been filled in. So I think it's important for every school that's not already just grandfathered into whatever you think the future looks like. It's all about winning, because winning leads to all of the other things. Winning, unless you just have that billionaire donor that's like got that juice to just suddenly pump everything up out of the kindness of his heart. Normally that comes on the heels of winning, or you're close to it and it's putting you over the top. And so winning. That's where all my focus would be if I'm on these teams. And then you win enough in 3 or 4 years, maybe that puts you in a better position to take advantage of whatever happens next. But if you lose these next 4 or 5 years, then depending on what happens next, you might not be a very attractive partner. So, yeah, I think everybody's going to have that. That's not, like I said, a part of the grandfathered in class of schools, which I would not consider Boston College to be a part of that. I think everybody's got that extra sense of urgency on top of the urgency they've already had of what all's built up over the last couple of years. So, yeah, I think the ACC will be an interesting league to follow, just knowing, like, is this held together by toothpicks and scotch tape for right now, or is this like going to be a lean, mean league that just like it makes it better because everybody's like out to scratch each other's eyes out? You know what I mean? Knowing that like there's lifeboats and there's that ship and it's out there in the distance, and
maybe it is like, you know, the scene of The Dark Knight where he's like, you know, the guys fight, like he breaks the pool cue and it's like, you know, there's still room for aggressive expansion, you know, like, but we're going to have tryouts. Maybe that works. Maybe that's how the ACC is. It's just, you know, a couple of dudes fighting over pool sticks to see who gets to work for the Joker. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but winning helps everything. That's all I know. So Boston College will try to win more than they did last year, and if so, then they'll be back in the postseason, and who knows where they'll be in the ACC race. But that is a tough second half of the schedule on paper.
All right, next up, let's talk hoops with Ryan Andrade. RotoWire joins us next. We'll see, like, hey, what are your thoughts on the Big 12 as it wraps up and heads to the tournament? You know, if not now, when for Bruce Pearl and more. This is 365 Sports.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Ryan Andrade joins us now. And Ryan, it's been far too long. Oh, look, you've got a new backdrop from the last time I talked to you. Did you move, or did you just decorate?
We just had to do some decorating, you know. If I was going to be back on here again, you know, we had to spice it up a little bit. So.
All right. Well, looking great. Looking great, my man. So we are winding down the regular season of college basketball. Conference tournaments are starting. Big 12-wise, look, first off, let's talk. I know you're a Kansas guy. Is this what's more disappointing, last year Kansas or this year Kansas, given the amount that they spent on the roster to address a depth problem, which they still haven't, at least they're not running out of guys to play games like they were last year, but nothing's worked out how they thought it would.
Yeah, just coming in asking me the big questions right out of the gate. I like it. Yeah, no, man, it's been tough this year. You know, last year, I think, you know, you could at least blame, you know, the injury to Kevin McCullough. I mean, he was, before he went down, probably going to be a first-team All-American, and they just didn't really have him healthy at all the second half of the year. So at least he had something to say here. This year, I mean, you look at the roster and, you know, they've been largely able to avoid injuries. They've been pretty healthy. It just hasn't clicked, man. And, you know, there's probably something to be said, the fact that, you know, these last two seasons are, you know, really the worst offensive seasons under Bill Self at Kansas. You know, Hunter Dickinson, you know, he puts up good numbers. You look at the stat sheet and it looks great. But when you actually sit there and watch the games, it's like the 12 rebounds he gets are the easiest 12 rebounds of the game. So he just doesn't seem to affect the game very much. He's pretty slow on his feet. He's not a great interior defender. You know, DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams, they were great early on in their career when they could just be role players, and, you know, they had a lot more talent on the team along with them. But now that they're being asked to carry so much of the load, really, you know, they've struggled to live up with that. And, you know, the transfers they brought in, yeah, you mentioned it, you know, they paid a lot of money for this roster. And listen, I think, you know, maybe Bill Self is still adjusting to, you know, the way NIL and how college basketball works these days, and not having a guy be able to stay there for 4 or 5 years. But certainly the pieces they've gotten, while talented on their own, they certainly haven't fit together like I think he wanted.
Ryan, what do you think of the surge that BYU and Kevin Young have been on here?
Oh yeah. They are absolutely one of the teams I'm definitely keeping an eye out to see where they fall in the bracket, because I think they have potential to make it a long ways. I really like this team. I mean, honestly, the expectations for them were, I don't really know what expectations you could have had. I mean, Mark Pope leaves for Kentucky and, you know, brings a couple guys with him, and, you know, Kevin Young, yeah, he has done an outstanding job with this team, and they are really playing their best basketball of late. I mean, they shoot the ball tremendously well. They got, you know, plenty of size, and it's definitely a team that I'm looking forward to see where they shake out in the bracket.
Obviously, we'll talk about the SEC in a second. They're head and shoulders above everybody right now. They're just so dominant. Where do you think the Big 12 actually compares on them? Because they still have elite teams, some really good teams. Houston is elite. Iowa State's really good. Arizona can be fantastic if they decide to be on any given night. You know, they've got good teams. Baylor and Kansas can even still turn it on. You know, like there are teams that are good in this league, but comparatively, collectively as a conference, could we see multiple deep runs, or is this going to be a tougher year for that?
I think there's plenty of possibility for that, honestly. You know, I did mention BYU. Texas Tech is a team that when the season started, I was all over them. And, you know, I thought they were going to be sort of a sleeper for the Final Four, and now they might be as much as a 3 seed. I mean, they just have so much talent. JT Toppin he's incredible. You know, some of the guys they've brought in as well. So I look at them, you know, Houston, I don't think this Houston team has the same amount of talent they did the last couple years with a Marcus Sasser and a Jamal Shedd there, but they just are so fundamentally sound. They just don't make mistakes, and they're going to rebound their minds off, and they're just a tough team to play against and beat. And if you would have told me that this Houston team would have gone 18-1 in the Big 12 this year, I could not have believed that for an instant. I mean, that what Kelvin Sampson has done this year is he should be in the Coach of the Year discussion, I believe. And but yeah, no, I mean, there's plenty of other teams too. Arizona, I think, is a little bit inconsistent. Iowa State, I think early in the season, there was a lot of guys that were saying they might be, in the mix with an Auburn or a Duke or somebody like that to win the title. I mean, you look at the roster and, they got 3 great guards and, a lot of size on the interior. They've struggled of late, but I still truly believe that, if they get everything right, they're fully capable of making a push to Elite Eight and maybe in the Final Four.
All right, so let's jump into the SEC. And Auburn and Janai Broome are so amazingly good most of the time. Now, they lost to A&M the other night. Bruce Pearl took a shot at the crowd because that's what Bruce Pearl does, even though there were a ton of people there. I don't know. He can't help himself. If not now, when for him? Because I don't know if he can build a team. I'm not knocking him, but everything is lining up for him. He's got the best player in the country. They've got depth upon depth. They're just so unbelievably talented.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the year for him. I mean, if it's not this year, he's not going to have a better chance to win it. I think to me, as I'm sort of sizing up this tournament, I think it feels very, very similar to last year when you had UConn and Purdue, and those are the 2 teams that everybody was talking about. They felt like they were the most complete teams, and really that's what it feels like again this year with Duke and Auburn. I mean, Auburn, man, they brought back, a lot. And today's day and age, these good teams don't really bring back a lot. You brought back Janai Broome, Chad Baker-Mazara, Dylan Cardwell, Chris Moore. They got all kinds of depth across every single position. And, the freshman Dahad Pettiford has been amazing. Miles Kelly on the perimeter has given them, a different look there. And man, if they certainly, I think they are truly the most complete team with the most experience. And I think you can't underestimate the fact that they're going to be coming into this pissed off after what happened last year when they lost to Yale in the first round. So yeah, they are, I would not be surprised to see maybe kind of like a Virginia turnaround, lose to an 18 seed and then, go on and win it the next year, something like that.
When you look at the rest of the SEC, Tennessee is good. A&M is good. Kentucky is not quite there yet, but they're good. They're not going to have Kirk Christen. I'm sure that's gonna hurt for them, down the stretch. Florida's very good. Georgia appears that they maybe made it in the tournament. Oklahoma was still kind of in it for a minute for a little bit. Do they have 5, 6, 7 teams you think that can make a Final Four run?
I think this conference, the SEC this year, has so many B-plus teams, I would say. I think there's only really 3 teams that I can actually see making the Final Four. That's Auburn, Florida, and Alabama. I think those 3 they have the ability to just will their way to wins. I think, Florida is probably going underrated a little bit nationally. I think they're so talented. They got, a lot of interior size who moves really, really well. That's really tough to play against. Walter Clayton is obviously just an outstanding scorer. Alabama, they made it there last year. They still got an incredible roster. Can they, win games, giving up 95 points? If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be them. I think, but, the rest of this conference, Tennessee, Texas A&M, both very poor executing in the half court. Missouri and Kentucky both really struggle to defend. Kentucky is going to be without Jackson Robinson for the rest of the year. There's a lot of teams that I think you compare them, and I know the hype all year has been SEC is going to have, the most teams ever in a tournament since, the Big East, I believe, had 11. But, I think there's a lot of teams up top in the Big 12 and the Big 10 that are that match up very well against a lot of these middle tier SEC teams.
There are 3 really good teams in the ACC in Duke, Louisville, and Clemson. But really, it's only like this is Duke's world, and the rest of them are living in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, my only concern with Duke is the fact that, the formula really hasn't been, the freshman superstar rosters, right? It used to be that, 10 years ago, but in recent years, a lot of these, freshman-led teams have, sometimes crumbled a little bit under the pressure in the tournament. So, I'll definitely be watching them, see how they perform in the ACC tournament. I do really, really like the job that Clemson and Louisville have both done this year. We saw Clemson last year almost make it all the way to the Final Four. They brought back a lot from last year. They're a very efficient shooting team. Louisville, I mean, their turnaround has been incredible. They've lost 1 game since December 15th. I mean, Pat Kelsey has just done an unbelievable job turning them around. Chucky Hepburn, Wisconsin transfer, has been maybe the best perimeter defender in the country. A lot of the talk with the ACC has been, they've got, the ACC is so down. It's not what it used to been. And yet we show up to March and, there's always 1 or 2 or 3 even ACC teams in the Elite Eight. So, while you could say maybe they don't get challenged the same way as the SEC or the Big 12 from a night in, night out basis, I mean, when it comes down to it, they're putting their best foot forward come March.
Yeah, certainly. So, I'm curious on, there's always trends, when it comes to coach hiring and things like that. Luke Laux is going to be the coach at FSU. He's an NBA assistant. Jensen at Utah, NBA assistant, right? But he's bailing on the Mavs at the right time. Believe me, Utah's a much more fun place to be than the AAC right now. And then Kevin Young last year. Is this the new coaching trend in college basketball, since they are, essentially a pro league in and of themselves with paying players, that NBA coaches are where they're going to look because that's maybe the recruiting model that they're doing, even though most of these guys right now don't have a ton of recruiting experience?
Yeah, it's tough to say, right? I mean, I think, for a lot of coaches that have been in this for, decades, it's these last couple of years have really, really tested them. And, it's not as easy as it used to be. You thought, you come into the season and think, okay, I got, a couple freshmen here that are going to be sophomores, a couple sophomores that are going to be juniors, and I'm all good here. But every single year, I think every coach has to basically recruit their entire team back, because you can just hop in the transfer portal if you're not starting or you're not, playing the position you want to play in, and just go to a completely different team. So, I don't know if that's, I mean, that is obviously the trend that's happening. I don't know if it continues to go that way. There's definitely other places to watch for, incoming coaches or things like that. Oklahoma, I think, is kind of interesting. Porter Moser is right on the bubble. If he doesn't make it, he's 0 for 4 since he went to Oklahoma, which I think nobody would have really thought after, his great tournament runs at Loyola. So, I mean, there's definitely going to be some hot seats and some places to watch.
How close are you to feeling confident about, I mean, in a week and a half, we're going to fill out brackets, or 2 weeks now, about who you think can be legit from all across the country? Is there someone we're leaving out that we haven't talked about yet?
I did mention, Duke and Auburn. I feel like they're head and shoulders above the rest. I think if you go a little further down, there's, a few maybe teams that wind up in that, 4, 5, 6 range that I kind of like. I think Maryland has really come on of late. They've got an absolutely dynamic front court with Julian Reese, Derek Queen. They got a lot of good shooters on the perimeter. That would be a team I watch. I mentioned Clemson and Louisville as well. And I think, honestly, and this might be a crazy one, but I would not sleep on UConn just yet. I mean, they've got the championship pedigree. Obviously,
we get the best effing coach in the game.
I mean, they do, right? I mean, he's going to let you know about it. And honestly, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him as an underdog in a lot of these games. He's probably going to be in, I'm just thinking of a potential, 1-8 matchup between Duke and UConn or something like that. Like, could you imagine how the numbers that game would do in the second round? That would be incredible. I would love to see something like that.
Oh, that would be nuts. Yeah, that would be nuts. Absolutely. Well, Ryan Andrade, we'll have to – it's almost golf too. Like, we probably could be talking about golf all the time. I'm curious on your thoughts on the golf league. I'm enjoying watching it, even though half the time I forgot the sound off and I don't completely know what's going on.
Yeah, it's been cool, actually. I've been really dialed into it. I think it's so different than what you get, watching a Thursday through Sunday on the PGA Tour. You're getting some of the best stars in the game, just trying to figure out, how the simulator works and these weird, quirky shots they got to hit all around the green. You got people cheering, making noise. And it's been, I think for its first year, it's done, pretty much all it really needed to. And I think, being on ESPN as well has helped it. So, I've loved it. I'm getting excited here we got the Players next week, and then we got the Masters in, about a month. So, big things ahead for golf.
There we go. Ryan Andrade with us here on 365 Sports. Ryan, I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Sounds good, man.
There you go. Ryan Andrade. When we come back, we'll clean up some of the stuff we didn't get to in the Open, and then Justin Williams of The Athletic wrote a column about the ACC maybe paving the way for at least showing the model of what the Super League will be. That's coming up next. This is 365 Sports.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Check out the 365 Sports family of channels on YouTube.
Welcome back, Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. And Craig, just a couple things that we didn't get to in the earlier going of the show. Justin Williams coming up in the next segment. This I saw from On3 today that these recruits have reclassified from 2027 to 2026. They're all top 10 guys in the 2027 class. There's 5 of them here. The names don't particularly matter where they're going like right now, but it is an interesting trend, and I'm guessing that this is 100% to do with NIL.
Yeah, I think it's 100%. I want to go make money quicker is what this is. So, yeah, I think it's a new normal, as it says right there. That's probably pretty accurate, and could this just be the way that it is moving forward as far as really being the new normal? Yeah, I think so, because, I mean, what's going to deter guys from not coming and getting the bag as quickly as they possibly can? So, yeah, this is, to me, this is all money related. There's no other reason really for more than a guy or two. You know, if there's some guy who's just so far ahead in his classes that he's just that type of kid that is ready for it to graduate early, that's one thing. That's few and far between, though, when we're talking about these prospects. But to, reclassify and move up a whole year entirely, to have 5 guys who, let's not just say 5 guys, but number 2 national, number 4 national, number 5 national, number 6 national, number 7 national. So there's 5 of the top 10 recruits in the country. That's not a coincidence, no. That's all NIL, let's go get our bag and get to college football and make this money as quickly as we possibly can, because that's not the number 72nd ranked offensive lineman that we're talking about. It's all top 10 national prospects there. So yeah, I don't blame him. If I was 17 and I had what these guys probably have, minimum 6 figures, probably 7 in some cases, if not all cases, being top 10 guys, then yeah, that would be very appealing. As much as you want to hang out with your friends and do all that, it's a lot cooler to come back and after the fact, a semester later, while everybody's starting to go off to college and you're already, making thousands of dollars and doing, spring practices or just playing a year early, whatever. Yeah, that's cool for them. It's a new world for sure, and definitely a new normal.
Yeah, it is. The first thing I thought when I saw this is that there are too many grades in high school. Or are there too many grades just in general? Overall, maybe there are. I don't know.
What do you mean?
If you can just finish in 3 years now, are there too many grades? Could everybody do it? Could we get people into I'm just thinking of could we get people out of school faster? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's I feel like that's what people are working towards right now is let's just not have it. How about that? Let's just not do school. I feel like there's a lot of people that feel that way. But no, I don't know. It's definitely weird, but it is the new normal, as that graphic says. And again, if you were a guy who can leave a few months early and go make $200,000 versus waiting for another year and whatever risks may come with that, then yeah, I think you'd go grab that money while you can grab it, even if it's probably pretty good chance it'll still be there later on.
Yep.
That's also a year earlier you can get to the NFL and make the really, really big money.
That's all about money. Again, it's 3 years after your high school graduation when you can play in the NFL. So this means that there's going to be a lot of 20-year-olds, right, in that kind of class that do this. And we'll see. Again, you said this is these guys don't go further than what, 6th? They're 7th on the list.
Yeah, it's 7. It's 5 of the top 7 players in the country based on that graphic. So
yeah,
I don't think that's coincidental at all.
No,
all we're missing is number 1, 3, and that's the top 7.
Yeah,
right there.
And wouldn't shock me to see those two. Swing around later in a second. All right, a couple of interesting NFL notes. Terrell Bernard, our guy. We say that. I mean, he played here at Baylor, but one of the fun guys to cover when he was here. Got himself a nice little extension from the Bills. One of their best defenders when he stays healthy. He's an elite player, sideline to sideline. Has really adjusted well to the league. Really awesome to watch. Super happy for him that he got that second contract, which is the real bag, especially since he wasn't a first-round pick. So this is the goal of every NFL player, is get to that big second NFL contract, or the first one, and good for TB here. Happy for him.
Yeah, he's a great player. He's all Buffalo first team, like face of the franchise type of guy behind Josh Allen, obviously, but I don't think his name's too far off that list. Like, he's probably one of the next couple of names that you would mention on that team, I think, at this point. He's the leader on defense. He makes the calls. He's had a terrific career that's only been marred somewhat by injuries, but nothing that's like derailed it, obviously, because he's cashing in. And that was my big concern for him, was just stay healthy enough that your play's been doing the talking. But if you can just stay healthy and keep playing at the level that you're playing, then you have a nice shot to do exactly this right here, which is cash in on it. So that's amazing for him. He was, what was he, like a third-round pick, I think off the top of my head, something along those lines. But, yeah, this is awesome for him. 4 years, 25.2 of that is guaranteed. He'll make $12.5 million average annual salary with a base of 3.2. So point being, he's going to be a millionaire, and he's going to be making the biggest money of his life, maybe from here on out. It'd be great to get another contract, but, you just never know how these things work. So the fact that he was able to get to this point and set up his family, set up himself for the future is awesome. He's just 25, so he's got a long way to go. But you do worry about injuries, right? And you just don't know how those can affect a guy's career. So awesome to see him be able to maneuver around those and just be so good, because if you watch him, he's a fun player to watch, and he's definitely part of the heart of Buffalo. So I'm thrilled for him. That's awesome. That's the biggest NFL news that Baylor program's had in quite a long while. I mean, I'm trying to think of, there were some draft picks that's kind of tapered off now at this point. I mean, he and Petrie. And then you got Ross Matisic, who's like an all-pro long snapper. But, I mean, I don't know how many people are paying attention to that part of things. So, yeah, he's the face, I think, of the NFL stars, even more so than Petrie at this point, I would say. So, yeah, that's awesome for him.
Next up, this story and this kind of goes in the offseason thing, but I do think it was weird. Brown star Myles Garrett recently requested a meeting with owner Jimmy Haslam, who declined to speak amidst Garrett's trade request, per sources, this is according to Tom Telcero of NFL Network. Both sides are dug in. Cleveland refuses to even discuss a trade. While Garrett is preparing to miss games, he's not traded. The owner sent him to the GM, said, you need to talk about this. Jimmy Haslam, not one of the better owners in the league, and Garrett did a very good job finding the grumpiest looking picture of Jimmy Haslam he could find. But, sometimes like you got to talk to your big time star. I just think it's so weird that he's not talking to him, and maybe he could get him to rescind the trade request if he would just sit down and talk to him.
Or maybe if you don't talk to him, you don't have to agree to anything.
Yeah, exactly.
You just don't have to do anything. That's where my head goes, is he's not even entertaining the idea of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the meeting, you're at least entertaining the idea. You're at least opening up the dialogue. If you don't have the meeting and you just basically let it be known, we're not going to hear you out on this, then what do you really have to do if you're Myles Garrett other than become more disgruntled, which is probably what the next step will be. And then he'll sit out OTAs, and he'll threaten to sit out training camp, and then we'll find ourselves at that point, right? I mean, isn't that the most likely path now at this point?
Yeah.
So we'll see how into the fight both sides are for the long haul. I mean, they've made it pretty clear they don't want to get rid of him. He's made it very clear he doesn't want to be there. So these things typically work themselves out. But, I mean, I would love to see Myles Garrett go join my favorite team. That'd be amazing, and I think Washington would have a really good shot at him if they were to free him up. But I totally understand Cleveland's position of not being interested in doing that at the moment. But players typically get their way after a while, right? Like become disgruntled. Like I feel like he'll probably get his way out. Maybe not in the very near future, but I feel like he'll ultimately get his way. But yeah, that is an interesting tack to take if you're Jimmy Haslam. Like, I don't have to do anything. If I don't hear you, then I don't have to answer the phone.
Yeah. By the way, the chat room really does like the name Booby Feaster.
Booby Feaster?
Yeah.
Oh.
They rather enjoyed that.
I believe that. If I was looking at that list and said what would chat most enjoy, that'd be the name I would expect they'd probably enjoy the most. But yeah, it's a DeSoto kid.
Yeah.
Booby Feaster.
He is a baller.
Yeah, and he's like I don't know if he's definitely not the most famous Booby from Texas. There'd be a lot of those,
Miles,
but
right?
even football player, Wise would be Booby Miles from Friday Night Lights. Would be the real Friday Night Lights. Odessa Permian Friday Night Lights. Booby was the star who got hurt and then college dreams went away and that tale as old as time. He's like the poster child for that.
Who would be the most famous booby from Texas? Anna
Nicole Smith, yeah. That's exactly where my head was at as well, Paul. Yep. Anna Nicole Smith would be. But, Booby Feaster, I wonder if there's any connection to, probably not, but there's the Booby Miles from Friday Night Lights.
Well,
that makes me think of that every time.
Look, all it takes is them watching the movie and a team building thing, and all of a sudden he goes from, I don't even know what his actual first name is, but.
I don't either.
I just always know, since I started hearing about him a couple years ago, it's Booby Feaster, so. All it takes is that.
His first name is Breast.
Okay.
No, it's Ethan. Ethan.
Yeah.
Feaster.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. One more before we take a break and go to Justin Williams of The Athletic. FSU has found their replacement for Leonard Hamilton. Luke Laux, who is a former player there, the point guard at FSU in his basketball career. Sacramento Kings assistant right now. This says that he is going to be named, but he has already informed the Kings that he has taken the job. So Luke Laux, the new basketball coach at FSU, and I'm I don't know how to feel about it. Like, I guess the proof's going to be in the pudding. There's probably 4 or 5 coaches they could have hired where I would have had a genuine reaction to it because I know how good of a college basketball coach they are, but they didn't do that, and so I'm glad that it's an alum, but I can't even tell you how I feel about it yet. I reached out to a couple people that would know about, or I thought would know, and they're like, honestly, I have no idea because there's no recruiting metrics or anything to grade him on when it comes to being a college basketball coach.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a great feeling on it, then I certainly don't. Just my interest levels in basketball and then not being really familiar with this guy, I don't know what to really make of it outside. I guess my first thought is that it's a great year for NBA assistants going to college basketball and get head coaching jobs. Well, it's like the 3rd job that we've seen. I think maybe it's at least the 2nd with Utah's recent hire.
Yeah.
Just in the last couple of days, have you seen NBA assistants? Obviously, Kevin Young's a guy that you point to as well. I'm sure there's others that I'm just not thinking of at the moment, but it's been a nice little run of NBA guys making the jump to college basketball to become head coaches. So I know that Florida State had a whole age of basketball under one guy, and now it's just probably going to feel odd, right, to see somebody else sort of trying to put this program in a position to win because you got so used to, I guess, the same old for so long. So does this waken up some FSU basketball fans? Is there a lot of FSU basketball fans? I don't know. I don't know what the history is really there, but it's exciting to probably just have some fresh new blood, I would think, for the program.
Look, I can tell you that unequivocally that it is just there needs some energy shot into it.
Yeah.
Because it's just been Leonard Hamilton for so long.
Exactly. Like, just to have something new is nice.
I left Tallahassee in 2002. He was the coach there then. Like, it's been a very long time, and they've had success. Look, 2020, after the pandemic, it derailed. But 2020, they were an Elite 8 team at least. They were fantastic. Absolutely really good. And who knows what happens if they actually play the tournament that year. Not as good as Kansas, Baylor, and Gonzaga were that year, and maybe a couple other teams, but they were rolling. And they had 4 NBA guys on that team and really, really, really an excellent squad. Then the pandemic ends it, and then they haven't been the same since then. They just need a new system. They need new blood. Luke Laux hopefully brings that. I was hoping for Will Wade because I want a guy who pull out all the stops.
Just win, baby.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I don't think that Florida State, given how much they have to allocate to football right now, is completely all in on basketball.
Oh, really? They have a big price tag in football? I haven't heard anything about them need money in football. That's weird.
Yeah, they're probably about 85% of where they need to be all in on basketball. And they're very much all in on baseball right now, too. So not that would ever, make a dent in basketball, but if there's something that maybe if there's 2 things that are pulling the financial purse strings a little tighter when it comes to basketball, it's that. I really wish they wouldn't play in Donald L. Tucker Civic Center, but, until I donate the money to build them a basketball facility, that's where it's going to be. So
yeah, well, I mean, good for the fan base to have something to shake it up a little bit. I mean, there's people that graduated from Florida State that never saw but the same head coach from the time they were born until they graduated here recently. Like 22, 23-year-olds that have never seen anybody but Leonard Williams there as the head coach. So, this will definitely be a new era for sure for the Noles. But I'm curious, once we get past the house settlement stuff, if we can finally get that out of the way and stop theorizing about it and what it could, like, we actually see what it's going to do. Like, that's what I'm looking forward to. Because I'm based in facts. Like, I like to just, like, I like to know solid things. And so, it's hard to, like, kind of go, like, well, I wonder what effect this will have on basketball. I'm just ready to see, like, what effect will it have on basketball? Like, our team's now going to start pulling the purse strings tighter because they're going to start going, football's way more important to what we're doing, so we're going to shuffle that over here. And then what effect does that have, the trickle down? We're finally going to start, I think, seeing the real effects of all that coming up here in the next 2 years. And that will be interesting and maybe a little bit scary for some, but it's going to be interesting. Just maybe not in always good ways for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, Justin Williams of The Athletic. This is 365 Sports. Edward Jones financial advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? Invest with Edward Jones financial advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, who invest their time and experience back to you and your money. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Contact Ben Erlinson at 254-759-8533. Brad Wilson's location at 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, and Cam Heathcott in Conroe. Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, proud sponsors of 365 Sports. Edward Jones, making sense of investing, member SIPC.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. He keeps me coming back. Cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. Does the dishes too. I'm in love with a man named Rudy. Last name barbecue. It sure is easy to fall in love with Rudy's tasty oak smoked barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Smokey will be back on Monday. I will not be here on Monday. Taking the wife on a little weekend getaway, Craig. And by weekend, I mean Sunday and Monday, because it was I was able to use hotel points. If I can give you guys a Here's a pro tip on how to get a ton of hotel points. When you go and sit through one of those stupid timeshare things, you have to bring someone like my wife who can just tell them no really fast. Mm-hmm. And then like when we were in Maui sitting through one, the guy capitulated. She created a whole backstory for us that, really was quite well done. I told her she should be a screenwriter. It was quite good about, what, and the guy's like, well, what about this? He's like, no. And he's like, all right, well, here's your points. And then you go. So we have these hotel points that I need to use. And so I'm cashing them in for a little getaway since her work is on spring break. And so she can have a couple days. So that's where I'll be. I'll be back on Tuesday afternoon. So I won't do the triple option on Monday or Tuesday, but I'll be here on Tuesday afternoon. And by then we should be, I think we'll do Clemson schedule, right? That would be the Clemson schedule.
Yeah, I think so. I guess I'm not sure if there's anybody right after Boston College before Clemson. No, I don't think so. So yeah, that would be up next.
Yeah, Cal is there you go. So Cal will be Monday. So
yeah, you'll be back for Clemson, I suppose.
Yeah, unless you guys want to skip it, let me dive into Cal. Cal's got a pretty interesting schedule. I'm just looking at it right now. But the first few games. They play future Pac-12 team San Diego State.
Oh, maybe their future Pac-12 bunkmate again in the future. We'll see how all that goes. It's going to be some of what's not figured out right now but gets figured out later. They are definitely one of the more interesting teams in terms of the ACC news and how you're affected by that because, man, they were out there for all of a year before – the conference already feels like it could be getting the plug pulled on it potentially. Not now, but in the future. So, yeah, weird spot for Stanford and Cal. But as we talked about yesterday, Stanford's kind of okay regardless of whatever happens. Cal, we're not so sure.
Yeah. What was it? Stanford, I can't remember now, I'm blanking on the guest who said it. It's just about, do they want to?
Right.
Like, they can do anything they want. They have all this money. Silicon Valley is grown almost completely out of Stanford. They've got all these gigantic billionaire donors. They have this gigantic endowment. So it just depends on what they want to spend it on. So, all right, Justin Williams of The Athletic joins us now. And Justin, it's been a long time. Good to see you, buddy.
How are you?
You wrote a column on The Athletic this week, an article about the ACC and this deal and how it might pave the way for what the Super League model would look like. What are your feelings on how much that would work out and what constitutes a Super League? Are we just using that word because it's the easiest one? Because, like Craig will say this, like the real Super League is the one that's just brands. Like that's just brands. But is this the Super League where it's not necessarily just brands, it just trims the fat of teams that just can't hang?
Yeah, honestly, this is kind of shorthand. Super League has become a shorthand for these. There was two prominent ones that kind of popped up last fall. One called College Sports Tomorrow or the College Student Football League. And then there was one that was kind of called Project Rudy for this venture capital firm. And so, yeah, you can call them a couple different things because I think you could also say, hey, if the Big Ten and the SEC just kind of poach who they want, maybe even trim who they want, that could be considered a Super League too. So you're really just trying to kind of shorthand what this would look like. But if we're talking about kind of a takeover, so it's not just the Big Ten and the SEC somehow staying connected to the NCAA and moving off on their own, we're talking about a whole other entity that completely removes football from NCAA oversight and basically starts a for-profit league. You know, kind of the most prominent one, this Project Rudy, is basically like a mini NFL. It's just the power conferences. So, you know, you're talking 60, 70 teams of the existing Power Four, and they go off on their own, and you can kind of keep the same conference structure, but then those non-conference games, you're not playing FCS schools, you're not playing Group of Five, you're getting more of those cross-conference big TV matchups. And, you know, this Project Rudy one, as an example, is kind of the most prominent, is, you know, says in their pitch that they're going to invest $9 billion in it. And so the reason why I think the ACC's move this week can kind of pave the way is because there's a lot of hurdles that have to be crossed. There's a lot of things that will have to happen for these Super League takeovers to take place. But the amount of money involved and college sports' recent history of just following the money makes me think that this is maybe now a little bit more of a possibility because of what the ACC did than, a couple months prior.
Justin, what was your, I guess, initial reaction when you saw the headline come down? I don't know if you were expecting it or not, but the news, and then when you, like all the rest of us, sort of learned more details in the following 24 hours of like, oh, wait a second, they're getting pretty much everything and more. What was your thought about just the end game in terms of who got what?
Yeah, there was definitely some rumblings that they were working towards a settlement. I think when ESPN picked up that option a couple months ago to, officially extend the contract to 2036, the vibe was that they were going to settle. But the question was, what does that look like? And to me, the settlement is a clear win for like Clemson and Florida State or any ACC team that would want to get out of the conference. The fact that the exit fee drops to $75 million in 2030 and beyond, as opposed to whatever crazy 9-figure number it was going to be before, that just gives Clemson and Florida State a runway and a lot lower price tag to exit the ACC in 5 or 6 years if they want to. And so, yes, I understand why the ACC did it. They don't want to be in litigation with 2 of their flagship schools. They don't want to keep fighting this. They want to do what they can to, survive and continue on for everyone else in the conference. But when it came down that it's not only unequal revenue sharing, which is a win for Florida State and Clemson because they're bigger brands, but that exit fee number in 2030, that to me is like, basically it's the ACC picking short-term survival for what at least right now certainly seems like long-term definite, destruction for it.
Justin, how do you think the other leagues will maybe even start out by copying the revenue sharing model?
Yeah, so that was the biggest takeaway. I get what it means for the ACC, but if you're looking at whether it's Super League or just how this changes college sports when some of these other conference TV deals start coming up, I think kind of the unspoken, thing hanging over those future deals was at some point Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten and Georgia and Texas and Alabama in the SEC, they're going to kind of start saying like, hey, we're pulling way more weight than some of these other schools when it comes to TV revenue. And now that we've completely disassociated from the amateur model and, covering Olympic sports, it's all, NIL and revenue sharing with players. Like these schools are going to say, we want to get our fair cut, basically. ESPN, Fox, CBS, they're not paying the SEC to show Mississippi State games or Vanderbilt games. They're, paying it to show Georgia and Tennessee and Alabama. And so I think it kind of was an unspoken thing that at some point these power elite schools in these conferences were going to start saying like, hey, we need to get our own cut. And I think the ACC, not that it wouldn't have happened without this, but the ACC kind of taking this plunge, it gives them a blueprint. It also just gives them an excuse to say, if the ACC's doing it, why wouldn't we do it? And then I think that can cause all kinds of upheaval or turmoil when these next contracts come up to be negotiated.
I know everybody now is looking at 2030 because that's when there's the big drop in the price tag. Do you think there's any chance that like a couple years in, Florida State will rally the private investors or the equity or whatever and say like, we can wait a couple more years. We just don't want to wait a couple more years. Like, I think everybody now is like, all right, 2030, we got time. And I feel like, well, if we've learned anything, then like 2028, I wouldn't be surprised at all if like North Carolina's like, see you guys, we're going to pay $120 million and get the hell out of here.
It's certainly possible. I think the biggest question there is, do they have a landing spot? Because so I think the Big Ten is 2030 when theirs comes up, right? I think the SEC is 2032. I think the college football playoff is 2031. So they're all kind of right there clumped together. But those conferences might say, like, we don't want to mess with renegotiating our existing contract. But yeah, if in 2028, maybe you start getting some seedlings of, all right, these schools in the ACC are now going to look for their exit when the Big Ten renegotiates their contract or when the SEC renegotiates their contract. And that's why I think the Super League, anything that would happen with kind of a distinct separate organization taking over, it couldn't happen until that early 2030 timeframe because of all these other existing contracts. But as they get closer and closer to that, that's where you might start seeing some teams say, hey, if we're going to start pushing for unequal revenue sharing, or if we're going to start poaching some of these ACC schools, what does that mean for the lower tier Big Ten and SEC schools? Maybe then you start getting a little more buzz of, all right, well, what if something else takes us over? And, the other part of this, which isn't the most fun, exciting thing to talk about, it is like the legal side of it. I know there's this House settlement coming up, but the NCAA is going to continue to have legal problems. These power conferences are going to continue to have legal problems, whether it's employment or collective bargaining or whatever. And part of the Super League pitch is like, hey, it'll be easier for us to deal with these legal issues as one single entity, dealing with Congress, dealing with the courts and things like that, as opposed to the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big 12 and the ACC all trying to figure it out on their own. So that's another reason that might start nudging people towards a Super League takeover, because it's like, all right, now it's out of our hands. We're out from under the NCAA, and another organization can deal with it.
Yeah. Do you think that it's viable to have? I mean, right now the conferences seem too big as it is. And we're only 1 year into that. Is it viable to have reasonably 24-team leagues?
It seems pretty ridiculous, especially you look at the way some of these conference races broke down, where they're unbalanced schedules. And so you're going to start having people complain, well, hey, Texas didn't have to play Georgia or Alabama this year, and another team did. I think that's going to continue to be a talking point. So, the other, not the Project Rudy, but that other Super League College Sports Tomorrow thing we talked about, theirs actually includes all of FBS, but they break it in, they get rid of the conference structure and they kind of break it down regionally. So whether it's that group or whatever kind of change happens, maybe you see the Big Ten and the SEC pull apart into separate divisions or pods, again, similar to the NFL. Maybe they start kind of breaking down the way that these conferences are structured, or a Super League breaks it down. But I'm with you. It feels like at some point in this process, there's going to be a major reset. We've kind of done not half measures, but NILs happened, and now we're doing the house settlement and direct revenue sharing, and we've had realignment, and all these little things are, kind of trying to address the issues in college sports, but not fully taking them and trying to do it all kind of in one fell swoop. I think if we do get to a point where that happens, whether it's the Big Ten and the SEC or another separate Super League takeover, I think you are going to have someone say all right, let's figure this out from a geographic standpoint or a much more manageable division, regional rivalry type standpoint. And that would kind of be part of the takeover.
So you mentioned the pitches by College Sports Tomorrow, also the Project Rudy. I know College Sports Tomorrow, you said in your piece they've tabled their discussion for right now, but Project Rudy continues on. So what do they do in the meantime, Justin? How does that work? Is it still just going and meeting with key stakeholders, kind of keeping it on the hush-hush? Do they just sit back and wait to survey? Kind of, if you're looking at that particular part of the storyline, is there anything to expect, or just they're going to be over in the corner observing, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it'll be, especially the Project Rudy group seems very intent on kind of doing things behind the scenes and quietly. College Sports Tomorrow was a little bit more public, when it first got started last year, but as you mentioned, now they're kind of pulling back. I think part of that is because it can't really happen until the early 2030s. And honestly, which College Sports Tomorrow, Len Perna, the co-founder, told me, there's just so much other stuff going on with the house settlement and these programs kind of trying to figure out their way in whatever this new era of college sports looks like. It's hard to say, hey, if you have this big $20 million a year revenue sharing thing coming up in June, it's hard to talk to people about what's going to happen in 2030 and 2031. So I think it's one of those things where these super leagues, they continue to pitch to anyone that wants to listen. They kind of make their case, and they're moving methodically but slowly towards what they hope will be kind of a future when, as they get closer to those resets of contracts, that's when they can start maybe having more tangible discussions or changes. But I also think it's something that, again, we've seen the SEC and the Big Ten commissioners kind of dismiss those publicly, but I think they're going to continue thinking about it from their own perspective. What does this look like for us, when the early 2030s hit, and how do they kind of change and adapt to this new era of college sports?
Do you think they have at least conversations in their mind, how do we tell Rutgers and Vanderbilt and all these other ones that don't fit our model anymore that, the ACC will have great spots. They'll be thrilled. Boston College called us and told us personally, we would love to play you guys.
It'll be interesting to see how that part plays out, right? Because that's going to be the kind of touchy aspect of all of this. I actually think it's more the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be on eggshells about what those top tier programs want to do, because for most of the Big Ten, for most of the SEC, they want to keep it status quo. Mississippi State wants to keep it status quo. Northwestern wants to keep it status quo. It's going to be Ohio State and Michigan whenever that shoe kind of drops, whenever they finally say, this has been fun, but we've kind of had enough of splitting this evenly with everyone else, and we want our own cut. all of a sudden that is when you're going to have to start seeing whether it's these smaller teams push for, well, let's go to a super league because they're going to guarantee us what we were getting before, or the SEC and Big Ten kind of trying to figure out or justify how they can appease their top programs while still keeping all this together and, kind of keeping the money flowing as much as possible for those lowest tier teams.
Yeah, I always think it's funny because, for example, the ACC model this year, the team with the highest ratings is actually Georgia Tech. Like they had they would have gotten the big bump this year if this was agreed to now. And that is what Florida State and Clemson in particular will say, like, hey, it could be Louisville. It could be you, Louisville. It could be, you never know. Duke, you never know. But all the schools that this does not entail, like, well, we know. Like, we know how it's going to be, especially considering that Notre Dame just told the ACC, hey, more Clemson and Miami and FSU. Like, those need to be in the rotation. We don't need to go 3 years without playing any of them. Like, two on, one off every year. And look, I even see that maybe going to all three of them every year for Notre Dame, and then the other two games just rotate through the other 14 teams or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate thing, and, it's funny, like, I wanted to make sure to include in that piece, like, if you're a fan reading that or listening to this and you're like, this sounds horrible, I hate this, I totally understand that. That is, totally fair and well within a fan's right. It's not like this is what it's going to be, so fans should have to accept this and take this. But for better or for worse, and I think you could point to a lot of examples where it's been for worse, college sports has shown it's going to follow the money, whether it's what you said about Notre Dame, like, hey, we actually just want to play Miami and North Carolina and Florida State, or whether it's conference realignment. And that's why, like, as maybe kind of far-fetched or far off as some of these Super League takeover ideas might seem right now, the money attached to it, I think, is too big to ignore that this could be the direction one way or another that the college sports is going to end up.
Well, look, if they go to 80 teams, right, and then like kind of trim some of the fat, I say that's wrong to say to the teams that don't want to be part of this, but if they just go to 80 teams and then there's a two-tiered system, but Rutgers and FSU and Clemson and Oregon and everybody makes the same amount of money, that's probably more sustainable than what we have now. Right?
Yeah, or like the Project Rudy pitch is basically no one's going to make less, but it's all performance based. So if you play well and succeed on the field, now again, history would tell us that it's probably going to be the same teams that have succeeded under the previous system. But I think that's why it could be enticing, because these teams are going to say, ESPN reported with this ACC settlement that some of the bottom level ACC teams could see $7 million less in their revenue from the TV deal from the conference moving forward under this new system. This is at a time when teams are searching for more money for this revenue sharing house settlement that's coming up. So again, I think the idea could be enticing to those lower level programs, because they're going to say, well, at least if we do this thing, we're not going to be worse off. And then for those top tier programs, they're going to say, well, yeah, we're going to go and win our conferences and win championships or win playoff games, whatever it looks like. And then we'll be able to make more money because of that. So there are some things that I think will be enticing. It will take a lot of moving parts and a lot of hurdles to jump over. But again, if these teams are going to follow the money, then yeah, I think you're right. It's going to make them continue to look at this as a viable possibility.
Justin Williams of The Athletic. Justin, thanks a lot, man. Talk to you again soon. It's been too long between segments. We can't do that again.
Always love coming on with you guys. So anytime, I really appreciate you, Paul.
Yeah. Justin Williams of The Athletic here with us on 365 Sports. Craig, something's going to happen. I think if I had to, if you gave me the plans, the one that keeps things the closest to they are the best way we know without losing too much of the regionality is the one I would go with. But
y'all are screwed if y'all are hoping for that, because everything that's been done is going against all of that.
Or at least you get to keep some of it, right?
Yeah, you will. The southeastern schools will still be there, and Texas and Oklahoma got their geography set up pretty well. But as we saw with the Big Ten and then the Big 12 and the ACC, regionality kind of flew out the window when they went and made their moves a couple years back. So, yeah, I think it's a weird time for fans that are just trying to wrap their head around, and media, most of whom are fans. I'm a college football fan before I'm a media guy. So it's been a lot to digest. Not all of it you enjoy. Not all of it goes down easy. But it's ever changing, and that's just the thing that you have to accept. So if you're hoping to put the genie back in the bottle, like that day's come and gone big time. But yeah, if you could somehow keep some semblance, the problem with that, I think, is people would have to make some forfeitures that they don't really want to make.
Yeah.
Like you want to be able to, I still want to compete for the national championship, and I want to play all my in-state schools or all the teams that we've always played. And it's like, well, that can't happen because Cal and Stanford, the Pac-12 is not what it once was. Like if they want that, they can go to the new Pac. They can go back to that at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have a feeling they're going to be complaining about their playoff access. So like it's just the way it was about 2 years ago, it's never going to be that way again. And it's never going to probably come anywhere close unless it just gets too big and too extreme and just too out there to where enough people go, this is BS, I'm turning this off, and we refuse to watch until. But like the problem with that is there not going to be enough of those people because, as has been well established, like the top 40 most popular brands are under the two umbrellas that continue to just be further fortified. So I've long wondered about the ESPN gamble or the other networks' gambles of, all right, they grabbed the biggest brands they could a couple years ago, and so they added L.A. and Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten, just further plumped them up. And then obviously Oklahoma and Texas are massive brands, and you add them to the SEC. Like there's not really many more of those moves except for plucking away the ACC schools that can be made. So there's like the 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever you consider to be there, but beyond that, like there's not too much more that you can do to, make it more regional or to put it back to where it was or to incentivize people to go back outside of just not watching. And I'm afraid that, the numbers for whom I don't want to piss off here, Kansas State versus TCU might not be great for ESPN the way that it was because several Big 12 fans have lost interest. But it doesn't matter because they've got Ohio State and Minnesota, and that's going to pull in $3.5 million no matter what, right? So, like, yes, they could lose ratings, they could lose fans, but the question will ultimately be, first of all, do you actually lose those fans? Do you actually lose those viewers? Is that all just blustery talk right now because people are pissed off? Mm-hmm. But then if you do, is it enough to make you go, oh, crap, we screwed this whole thing up? Yeah. Or like, oh, it's just one less Friday game. We'll just throw another game on there that'll get 500,000 people, and we won't feel it because on Saturday we're freaking loaded to the gills with 5 million per game, viewing spots. That's. I just don't know if there'll be enough of a drop off to actually make the networks feel it. If that's the route that you're hoping it will go to try and change things, it would take a massive boycott and a massive backlash. And I don't think we're to the level of massive or anywhere close to that because the fans of Alabama are still fine. Yeah. The Texas fans are fine. Michigan fans are cool. Like, Ohio State has no problems. The only ones like Notre Dame, but they'll have a spot, and they're fine right now. They're great right now. It's just a matter of, like, can you force them in anything? But, yeah, there's only so much more that you can change at this point, I feel like, and that's going to end here in the next 5 years with whatever happens with the ACC. Mm-hmm. Because after that, like, who do you go get? Yeah. There is nobody. Like, I'm sorry, they're not going to be knocking down the door for Texas Tech and for, whoever you want to throw in there. Name a Big 12 school or an ACC school. It's not Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami. And they're all going to be in the same boat, basically.
Virginia somehow gets in this discussion.
Yeah, they do. Because of, like, Big Ten, old money, old school stuff, like that kind of jazz. I don't know. I'm not well-versed enough. I know I've seen a lot about Virginia and how attractive they are, and that's when we get into, like, here's the TV markets and all that, and that's great, but I just don't know that's what we're still doing at this point. Because we're talking about big games, right? We're not talking so much about, let's get the D.C. Metro. Yeah. Like, that was the conversation previously. Now it's not like, let's get Virginia so we can get, like,
it's big games. So
it's like, and so Virginia's not a big game for anybody right now. And so I don't know if they would apply or if there would still be enough of, like, they're this big prestigious school. It's connected. We can take over the – like, if that was part of the pull, then I get it. But, like, in terms of making big games, it does nothing.
If it's about TV ratings, then you just have to take your best TV brands and constantly throw them – in the arena together.
Which then again, I mean, that could lead to other side effects of all sorts of possible scenarios of the culling of the bottom of the league because they're not pulling their own weight. Like Vandy's just not drawing eyeballs. I don't know, man. It's a crazy time, and it seems like when it's finally like sort of settling down, crazier stuff happens. So thank you, Florida State and Clemson and the ACC for bringing that part of the story to a close. So now we have all of this to discuss for the next 4 or 5 years or whatever it's going to be before there's actually a big change there. But this week was definitely newsworthy, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, the top 5. This is 365 Sports.
You might ask yourself what functional mushrooms are good for. Whether it's lion's mane, cordyceps, turkey tail, shiitake, reishi, they all serve a purpose.
You have ones for neurological health, ones for sleeping and gut health and all these different areas. They pack a powerful punch.
Functional mushrooms are, of the millions of mushrooms and fungi out there, the ones that we can actually ingest and benefit from as humans.
Like all adaptogens, they kind of adapt to what you need at the time that you need them.
We don't even really know that we're suffering. We just don't quite feel right. That's where these adaptogens come in and really start to close the gap and really start getting us closer to how we want to feel.
Functional mushrooms have definitely re-energized me and helped me face each day with a new vigor for life.
Learn ways that functional mushrooms can help you. Go to getumble.com.
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric, and personalize your cover. And leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome into the Friday Top 5. I want to talk about something that gives me a lot of pain, the Dallas Cowboys. And you know that as I continue down my it's rough to be me sports rabbit hole of the last couple years. Anyway, these are players the Cowboys should consider in free agency. Number 5, they need at least 3 linebackers. And I know that a couple of them, they'll all be on short-term deals. But they have no one on the roster past Maris Liafau, who's a really promising rookie last year, who will start this year, and Damone Clark, who they had high hopes for, but is really a rotational player. So, at 5, Shaq Thompson, on his way out in Carolina, a veteran linebacker who I think Matt Eberflus, who coached linebackers for the Cowboys before, he was the Colts defensive coordinator and the Bears head coach. I think he can get a lot out of Shaq Thompson. Whatever he's got left in the tank, he can get that out of him. So I think Shaq Thompson, a fit in that defense. And again, we're talking stopgaps here. They're going to have to address it in the draft, but they need stopgaps at linebacker for sure. And I'm going to say this, this is the overarching theme of any Cowboys offseason content. Steven and Jerry Jones do not believe this team is rebuilding. So if they are not rebuilding, then they cannot rely on the draft to get Dak and his teammates where they want to go. So you're going to have to dip into free agency more than you have. Now, none of these guys should be signed for more than 2 years, including some of the better ones on the list. Let's go to cornerback right now, a position that they need help in because Trayvon Diggs probably not going to be ready to start the year and may not play at all. And there are conflicting reports about how the Cowboys feel about Trayvon Diggs overall right now. So we'll see how that plays out. But Jordan Lewis is a free agent, likely going to get more money than they can pay. Who can, or they're willing to pay, even though it would be great to have Jordan Lewis back. If they lose Jordan Lewis, then Mike Hilton, Cincinnati, is a player who fits in Matt Eberflus' system, who can come in, play, give them valuable minutes like he's a basketball player, but valuable snaps across from Deron Bland. He's got potential to help there, and he's still a young player as well, 25, 26 years old. Mike Hilton from the Bengals. Shereen Williams mentioned him on the show the other day. Someone they need to consider. Number 3, Josh Sweat, defensive end from the Eagles. Took a pay cut last year to stay with the Eagles and help them make their ultimate Super Bowl run. A veteran, look, you could maybe bring back DeMarcus Lawrence. You could maybe get in there, but you're probably going to need at least one veteran defensive end to put across the way. They've got Marshawn Nealon, Sam Williams coming back. Of course, Micah Parsons is Micah Parsons, not a true defensive end, more of a pass rusher, linebacker, whatever you want to call, superstar, alien, superhero that came down from space. But Josh Sweat at defensive end could be a nice pickup for a couple years. And you saw, he had a great game in the Super Bowl. He had great games in the playoffs. Still got a lot in the tank. If you can get him on a short-term, a couple-year deal, nice bridge guy to let Sam Williams get back healthy and let Marshawn Nealon continue to grow as a player. Those are both guys who, between the two of them, will have 2 full seasons playing. Sam Williams, his rookie year, and then got hurt. And Marshawn Nealon was a rookie last year. Number 2, Raheem Mostert. You're going to have to bring in a veteran running back. I don't know what they're going to do in the draft. They're going to address it there. But no matter what, you're probably going to want a veteran just to put your mind at ease. Now, you could bring back Rico Dowdle, and the Cowboys are likely to do that because we like our guys. But I think you could do a lot better. I think you could go get a Raheem Mostert, who, again, this is probably his last contract, but just set a record for touchdowns 2 years ago. And in the right offense can be very viable, and especially as the number 2 option, a veteran presence that can help the rookie, whoever it is, whether it's Ashton Genty, Amarian Hampton, somebody later in the draft, whoever that is, transition to the NFL, and you guard against some injury and some depth issues there with a guy like Raheem Mostert who can still make a big play in the running game. And number 1, Davante Adams. This is unlikely to happen. I'm not going to sit around and think about it. But if you are truly not rebuilding and you want to get a guy on a 2-year deal who still has a lot of gas in the tank and can be a very viable, if not dominant, number 2 receiver, Davante Adams. Davante Adams and CeeDee Lamb on the same offense will be great for Dak Prescott. It'll be great for Jake Ferguson. It'll be great for Luke Schoonmaker. It'll be great for whatever rookie wide receiver they bring in. It'll be great for Ryan Flournoy and Jalen Brooks and Jalen Tolbert and all those guys. It'll be great for the running game. The Cowboys will likely not do this, but if they're serious about surrounding Dak with the best possible team to win, a high draft pick at wide receiver, and a free agent signing like Davante Adams tells Dak that you are supporting him. And it tells the fans that you're trying to go for it. Will it work out? All this is a crapshoot anyway, and free agency is no guarantee. But the Cowboys have not dug in that spot for such a long time. They need to supplement. Again, this is not the main course. These are the side dishes. So like when you go to the barbecue place and you say, yes, I would like ribs and brisket and sausage. That's the main dish. But we're talking beans, potato salad, perhaps some weird macaroni and cheese creation that they've all done. That's what you're talking about here. These guys are the side dishes to what could be a championship run if you do it right. If you really are as good as you think you are, but you have holes all over the place. So if you're not rebuilding, even though I think you should be, if you're not going to rebuild, you have to reload. How do you reload? You go get guys who have done it. Davante Adams has done it. 2-year deal. See what happens. Give Dak some more weapons. Could be fun. We'll see. Doubt it happens. If they sign one of these guys, I'll eat cauliflower on the air, and I hate cauliflower. But if they sign one of these 5 guys, I promise you, I will eat cauliflower. 3 pieces of cauliflower on the air. And nothing spurs a team on like humiliating a media jackass like me. So here, Cowboys, make this gravy boy eat cauliflower. The most disgusting thing that God has ever created. I will do that. That's going to do it for this episode of 365 Sports. Smoking Craig back on Monday, all back together on Tuesday. 365 Sports Tonight. If you are here locally, please like and subscribe. I know it's a little bit of pandering, but we have to pander a little bit. So,
yeah, I mean, it'd be like running a store and just never tell anybody to buy anything or advertise. It'd be kind of stupid, wouldn't it? So, yeah, I mean, if you haven't, then please do that. Be nice for us, and we just really appreciate it. Yeah.
And look, if you want to, rough some people up and make them do it too, I mean, what we don't know, we don't know.
Most of all, if you enjoy us and want us to stick around, then just do us that little favor for providing you this free show every day.
I'm not
just
telling
hit that
you,
button for half a second.
I'm not telling you to rough somebody up until they hit the like button and subscribe. I'm just telling you that if you do it, I don't want to know about it. That's all I'm saying. So, cone of silence. That's all we need. So, everybody have a great weekend. Craig, great to see you. Thanks to Andrew and Garrett. Garrett is going on a journey next week. An emotional and spiritual journey to look at his daughter's college. And so he will leave here 40 years old. He will come back and still be 40 years old, but he will feel 80. I promise you that. That weekend will make him feel twice as old as he is. And, of course, Emery Winter, everyone's favorite around this building, except for maybe Craig. I don't know.
I could take him or leave him, quite frankly.
Exactly.
You know.
That's going to do it for us. Have a great weekend, everybody.